special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. I am Jed Sear, President of the Board of Directors. The meeting is now called to order, and I have 5:02 p.m. This meeting is being held in person at the district's administrative office and by teleconference. Members of the public may attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom. Instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Christine Tucker? President Sear?
Sear, present.
Director Holman?
Here.
Director Kishimoto?
Here.
Director McNiven?
Here.
Thank you. And Director Ripple is absent today. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one item on the special meeting agenda. May we have the staff presentation, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager for Visitor and Field Services. And I usually don't include the Visitor and Field Services part when I introduce, but for this presentation, it's pretty essential. The Wildland Fire Resiliency Program really is under my business line and how we respond to and prepare for fires in our wildland areas. First, I want to start out just with, so we're open space, we're not a fire agency, right? So what is the connection to our mission and what the district does in fire, and particularly fire resiliency, and kind of try to get to why we use that title for our wildland fire program. So protecting, and I'm pulling out the kind of relevant parts here: protect and restore the natural environment and preserve agricultural land of regional significance and preserve rural character. So one of the things I love about the district best is when I can describe the dual benefits of something that we do. So an example is our grazing program, which feeds into our fire program because it reduces fuel. It also maintains our grassland. It also supports agriculture. So fire is a part of the natural environment. It's inherent. There will always be fires in the open space lands because that is how this vegetation evolved. And so by managing and undoing some of the harm that has incurred on the land in the past, we can actually make our wildlands more resilient, and we can also make our communities safer. So we'll get into a lot of details about how we do that, but really having healthier wildlands, healthier ecosystems. And some of the examples that really hit home to me are some of the work that we've done with these just solid eucalyptus stands that are very fire prone and also dominate the ecological landscape and don't allow for a diversity of life. And we've gone in and done removal and then either let things naturally recover or done some restoration work. And that type of work is restoring the ecosystem, and then it's also making the land much more resilient to fire and much safer to surrounding communities as well. So we're not going to eliminate fire, but we can do a lot of work to make the natural lands healthier, more resilient to fire, and also help protect our surrounding communities. So in addition to that connection to our mission, we have a specific strategic goal and an objective that relate to this. And we put this objective, I should have looked this up, I want to say it was about 5 or 6 years ago. This was, something that in talking to staff and talking to the board and particularly talking to the community, the increasing prevalence of fire and the awareness of it. We've always worked on fire. We've always had a fire response. We've always done a lot of work to take care of our lands that helps fire agencies respond to our lands and coordinated with them. And then we've always taken care of our own structures as far as clearance and that sort of thing. But we realized that we had to up our game. So really this objective 4, work with fire agencies and surrounding communities to strengthen the prevention of, preparation, and respond to wildland fires for enhanced ecosystem resiliency and public safety, was our attempt to put that all in one objective. And it really does capture the work that we're doing here, and why it's important for the environment, and then also for the safety of the community to make our open spaces resilient to fire. They are going to burn, but we can have an impact on how they burn and how that impacts our surrounding communities. So how do we get that done? This is basically the three departments, the three departments, the Land and Facilities Department, and Natural Resources and Visitor Services Department, that are responsible for the fire program. And then we also have significant contributions from our grants program, our GIS program. Always, GIS, we have one of the best GIS programs for an open space agency around, or parks agency, and then public affairs to kind of get the word out. So I want to go in just a little bit of inside baseball on how we divvy up the responsibilities. So land and facilities, that's our maintenance staff. They're out on the land. They're already doing all that work that we've always done, like clearing around structures, like clearing all our access roads, maintaining our roads. And on top of this, we've also developed new crews that are focused on resource management and fuels reductions, really getting at this ecosystem resilience work that we're doing. So they're doing the work on the ground, both through our own staff and through contracting. And then natural resources, as you know from being through the whole setup of our wildland fire resiliency program, really set the groundwork and helped set the framework for prioritization, and all the work to do of what work needs to be done to restore the natural environment and make it more resilient. So they're picking out all these big forest health projects like the eucalyptus, like the acacia, like the project we're starting in La Honda, to help our redwoods grow to old growth stature, and kind of thin the forest out a little bit. So they're looking at our lands, figuring out all those projects. They're also responsible for the monitoring, and then ensuring in all the work that we do it in an environmentally sensitive manner. Like, not all of our work obviously is restoration. We also do traditional fuel breaks, right, along roadsides, certainly around all our structures, around all our parking lots. We even enlarge the area we clear around them so they can be staging areas. So they're looking at that, doing plant surveys to make sure that we're not impacting the natural environment negatively while we do that work. And then our visitor services is our public safety and first responders to fire. But not only do they have that aspect when they're putting on the wildland yellow jackets, they're also making sure that the things like that start fire, like 95% of fires are started by people, that is very limited in anything that people going onto open space might do. So enforcing things like no smoking, we don't allow smoking on any of our open space preserves, or campfires. We do have that occasionally. We'll get into some of the numbers, but it's very rarely, and that's because we have an active patrol presence. We'll also be talking about our renewed prescribed fire program, and both the land and facilities staff and visitor services are involved in that. Land and facilities will be the primary staffing because they don't have the patrol demands of the visitor services ranger staff. And then the rangers will continue to be our first responders for lots of things, but including fires, and the local experts that can direct fire personnel into where they go. Grants, it's kind of self-explanatory. We'll get into the details, but a lot of the work that we've been able to do has been because we were able to fund it with large grants. The concept here is that we get grant funding to do the large initial projects, and then we build our staff capacity, which we've increased quite a bit to do the maintenance of that work. And the grants work is not done when the grant is secured. There's also a lot of administration that goes into meeting all the grant requirements as well. Our GIS really gets into looking at the landscape and setting our priorities. We'll get into some more of that, but we would be acting blind without the all the incredible GIS work that goes into this. And then public affairs, of course, we have to get the message out to our visitors and our neighbors about all the different programs that we work with and how to be fire safe in an open space setting. So it takes the whole district. And with that, I want to get into how we just went from just a fire program that was the kind of the stuff that we've always been doing to this larger wildland fire resiliency program. With that, I'll introduce Kirk Lennington, head of our Natural Resources Department.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Kirk Lennington, Natural Resources Manager. And I'm going to begin my presentation, my portion of the presentation tonight, with an overview of our Wildland Fire Resiliency Program. Following my overview, then we're going to get into a lot more of the details of what our implementation of this Wildland Fire Resiliency Program has looked like over the last 4 years, I would say, right? 4. It looks like 4 to me. So as you can see, the program was adopted in 2021. However, you need to back up a few years because it took quite a bit of effort to build this program in the first place. And so that work started in 2018. Prior to that time, we were doing our vegetation management work in service of fire resiliency and fire protection under our IPM program. But that was fairly limiting in terms of the acreage that we could treat on an annual basis. And so that was one of the drivers that pushed us to complete our wildland fire resiliency program. As Brian mentioned, this fire program, and you'll hear that shorthand for our program because wildland fire resiliency program is cumbersome to say all night. So our fire program leverages the expertise of many district staff and departments, as well as that of our partners, both governmental and non-governmental sectors that support all the work that we do in managing our ecosystems. And so our fire resiliency program has multiple goals. And one of the first and foremost goals of that program is the protection and the restoration of the natural environment. And so that is the management of the vegetation to establish healthy, resilient, fire-dependent or adapted ecosystems. And this goal is in accordance with our mission to protect and restore the diversity and integrity of ecological processes on Mid-Penn's lands. And it also, our work facilitates healthy post-fire recovery should a fire occur. As well, our work under the Fire Resiliency Program is to integrate Native American practices as we co-steward the natural resources on district lands, particularly related to the use of prescribed fire to promote ecological resiliency and enhance the biodiversity. And then a third goal of our program is in recognition of the overall urban, suburban, and rural landscape of the Bay Area in which our open space preserves exist. And so this work is to reduce wildland fire risk. We do this through improved wildland fire fighting capabilities and coordination, as well as reducing the harmful effects of fire on people, property, and natural resources. And then finally, our last objective in the fire program is to establish an adaptive framework. And by this, what I mean is monitoring. And we do this so that we can review our work and we can revise our land management practices and decisions in response to changing climate, our improved knowledge and experience, and also improved technology. This framework also considers competing priorities, our capacity, funding, fiscal sustainability, partnerships, a lot of different aspects. And these all feed into determine the location, the scale, and the timing of our vegetation management activities. So backing up now, how did we get here where we had the need for this fire program? And that really begins with a story of the human impact on the environment. And that is really, it begins when humans had the ability to impact the environment at scale. And so that begins with what is now over a century of fire suppression in the West, beginning with the gold rush era of settlement of the West. And that really begins the story of our ability to suppress fire on any kind of scale that would impact its effect at an ecosystem level. As well, the settlement of the West. Yes, this one.
I'm sorry. I'm curious on what that, maybe you can read it. I'm trying to read it.
The
what
caption?
Yeah, what the slide says.
It says
What the
Fire
photo-
Camp in Santa Barbara, 1924.
No, I can read that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What you're wanting to read?
Either way.
Oh, the
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
oh
the provenance on the photo itself.
boy. I'll defer to somebody that has better eyes than I do because
U.S. Army Fire Patrol Camp in Soquet Canyon, fire season 1924.
Yeah, and it's what not a big deal, but it says it looks like it's Fire Camps, California. Santa Barbara's fire camps a part of Santa Barbara. It's above what you just read. It's a curiosity because it's a great photo and it's a great story it has to tell. So
we can find it for you. We can send it to you so you can
yeah.
have a better look
I
at
think
it.
That's what it's filed. I think that's what it's filed under, right? So fire camps, equipment, fire control.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks for your indulgence.
Absolutely. All right. I will kick it into gear here. Moving on to the next slide. So the settlement of the West also brought with it a fresh wave of invasive species introductions into the environment. And so there were already invasive species that were present back in the Mexican Rancho days in California and probably extending all the way back to European first contact. And so some of the species we deal with quite a bit. That would be French broom, eucalyptus, acacia. And these had an impact on top of the already greatly expanding invasion of European annual grasses that were already quite prevalent in California at that time. All of these species contribute greatly to the increased fire risk and the altered fire regimes that we see now. Unfortunately, the invasive species impacts in the wildland areas and impacts on fire behavior are not just limited to the weeds that we see on the landscape, but also are a result of forest pathogens that have also come in, and an example of which is sun oak death that you can see here on this slide, as well as other invasive insects that bring with them their fungal complexes that can also weaken and kill trees on the landscape. An example of that, which is the emerging shot-hole borer, of which there are now 3 species that are occurring in the Bay Area. Another aspect that influences fire behavior, and particularly in our region here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, is undoubtedly the history of logging of the old-growth redwood forests in the Santa Cruz Mountains that dramatically altered the forest resiliency to fire because of the cutting of those very fire resilient ancient redwoods and the regrowth of the very young forests that have a much more fire prone plant community, and the effects of which can take decades, if not centuries, to recover back to the pre-logging fire resilient condition, if that can even be achieved at all. As well, we are now addressing all of these impacts within the backdrop, or maybe the forefront, of the effects of climate change on the environment. And this operates on a number of different ways affecting our work. We have extended and warmer growing seasons, perhaps starting earlier in the spring. Certain years we have much greater growth of vegetation and that then translates into a higher summertime fuel load. As well, we experience more severe and prolonged droughts, and then an increase in extreme fire weather, such as warm, hot wind events like the Santa Ana or the Diablo winds. And then finally, the last category that I'll mention of impact is the disruption of natural ecosystem processes, such as the impact of concentrated grazing of the once prevalent large ungulate herds that used to occur in the California grasslands that are now extinct, or in some cases, such as this photo here of the Thule elk, are extirpated from this region. We attempt to replicate some of the impacts of those ungulates on a limited basis through our conservation grazing program. You're going to be seeing this graphic quite a bit throughout the evening. This is kind of our organizational framework as we step through what our wildland fire resiliency program looks like. And this graphic captures that. And you see here the 4 distinct plans that are different elements that comprise our wildland fire program. The first of which at the top is the vegetation management plan. And this greatly expanded our environmentally sensitive vegetation management into a much larger portion of the district's preserves for ecological health and public safety purposes. The acreages of which our fire plan now allows us to treat annually up to 1,230 acres of new fuel treatments annually. And then it also increases our annual maintenance limit up to 1,400 acres of those previously treated areas. And so those are big numbers. We're not there yet, but we have dramatically increased the amount of acreage, and you'll hear about that later this evening. As well, the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program reestablished, I should say, our prescribed fire program. And this is something that we just last year were able to enter again into our toolbox of land management tools in partnership with CAL FIRE. Another aspect of the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program is our pre-planning or our resource advisor maps. And what these are updated and expanded preserve maps that provide critical information to the fire agencies that respond to wildland fire events. This includes information on our infrastructure, such as our roads, the bridges, as well as the ponds that might be suitable as water sources for combating fire. These maps also importantly contain information about where our sensitive resources are located, so that we can properly plan for the suppression of fire in a way that doesn't negatively impact those resources. And then finally, the 4th component of the fire program is the monitoring plan. And this is the collection of scientific data and monitoring to ensure that the program is adaptable and it meets our goals. And so I'd like to conclude my overview of our fire program with a note about our approach to vegetation management. And this is something that we call ecologically sensitive vegetation management. And that is because this is such a large component of the program, frankly. What ecologically sensitive vegetation management is a process for us to do our land management and treatment areas. And that begins with a survey of the area to identify any sensitive resources that might be present, and to design our treatments so that we either avoid them entirely or they're conducted in a time of year when the impacts will be lessened. And then after those surveys, we then focus our treatments first primarily on the invasive and the non-native vegetation that could be removed to improve the fire resiliency of a treatment area. As well, we want to focus our work around maintaining our equipment and our practices so that we minimize the introduction of invasive species or pathogens into our treatment areas. And this is particularly important because the treatments of the vegetation have an initial disturbance that could leave these areas more prone to invasion of invasive species. So we want to make sure that we are not actually inadvertently working against ourselves by creating an invasion of exotic species into these treated areas. We also want to avoid sensitive habitats such as aquatic sites and wetlands. And then we also want to make sure we are clearly marking and identifying those threatened and endangered species, such as pictured here on the right, a Kings Mountain manzanita in our treatment areas. And we want to, the bottom line is we want to achieve our treatment in a way that can achieve our multiple objectives of ecological uplift while also reducing fire risk. And then my last slide, finally, before turning it over to Cody, is just an acknowledgement of all of our partners that we work with and collaborators in creating and in implementing our wildland fire resiliency program. These partners include nonprofits and advocacy groups. They include tribal governments, all of our state and local fire agencies, as well as many other governmental agencies, both regulatory and non-regulatory, who have assisted us in the creation of this program. And then structural, just for how we're going to proceed through the evening, we're going to pause at the end of each presenter to take questions. So I'll move here to somehow I ended up with a chainsaw on my question slide, but yeah. So any questions? Otherwise, I will turn it over to the next presenter. All right, Cody.
Good evening. Cody Cifuentes Winter, Senior Resource Management Specialist. So tonight, what I'm going to do is just go over some of the sections of the proactive management of how do we plan to do this work. As a reminder, we help to take care of about 70,000 acres. And with that comes with also working with 12 different fire agencies. And so as you can imagine, prioritization is a huge part of what we do. We want to make sure that where we're putting our time and our effort is in those areas that are most needed. And making sure that for every dollar that we spend, it's being spent wisely. And part of that is our vegetation management program, and that is to address the creation and maintenance of fuel breaks, fuel management zones, defensible space throughout the area. The thing to keep in mind in regards to this is that we actually have two different aspects of our vegetation management plan. One, what we call our enhanced fire management. This is to get our responding agencies into an area and to get the public out of that area safely. The second part is the healthy forest, right? Ecosystem resiliency, as we like to call it. So those are both part of our vegetation management plan. Like I said, there's two different ones, ecosystem resiliency and enhanced fire management. And how this works is in our fire program, we have a discussion in there about what is the criteria that we use to determine where we do this work. These criteria were vetted both here with the board during public meetings, but we also worked with all the fire agencies so we could all come to a common understanding about what is important when we talk about ecosystem resiliency. What do we need to take into consideration? And so it's a point-based system that evaluates what is at a certain site. So some of these criteria include the presence of pathogens like Kirk was talking about, the presence of sudden oak death in an area where we know if we do have that, there's likely to have a lot more stress on our forested areas. It also takes into consideration fire risk maps that CAL FIRE produces. It also looks at our endangered species where we know we have rare and endangered species and those that need fire as part of their life cycle, such as the Kings Mountain manzanita, which needs fire to be able to germinate, and those that are prone to be impacted by fire, so we can sort of mitigate the fire use on those areas. This last part here, the tier 1 and tier 2. So when we look at these maps, and we'll see these maps in just a second here, just so you can see what they kind of look like, is to make sure, like I said, that we're using our money and our time because we have limited of both of those in the most critical areas. And so these maps will highlight these areas of concern for us. These are the ones that have the most type of criteria. So I touched on the sort of the prioritization criteria, the ecosystem resiliency, like I said, looking at sensitive natural resources, fire risk, pathogens, past land use, such as the timber operations that have happened over the last century or so. Those places in which we want to do prescribed fire to make sure that it is ready for a prescribed fire, that we don't have unhealthy fuel loads in those areas. So that way we can make sure that the fire stays where we want it to stay and has the effects that we're hoping it has. There's also the vegetation encroachment. Think about the coyote brush that we have that can encroach into grasslands with the lack of fire. Also Douglas fir is another one. Both of these species, though they're both are native, have been shown that they are going to have a very good foothold with climate change, actually, that they will have a competitive advantage to encroach into certain vegetation areas in which we want to maintain, especially grasslands. For enhanced fire management, we're looking at, do we have structures nearby, pathogens as well, target hazards. If you haven't heard this term before, a target hazard are those areas in which we want to make sure that we're protecting. These can be places in which people cannot get out very easily. So you can think of nursing homes, hospitals, police stations. These are the areas in which we want to make sure that we can maintain a safe environment for them, because it's going to be too hard for us to try to evacuate that. Evacuation routes, Highway 35, 84, Page Mill, these places in which have been designated by either sheriff's departments or by the fire department as an evacuation route, in which we border a lot of these areas. And so making sure that if we have a major evacuation route like Highway 35, that we put our focus, because this is an area in which the fire agencies, again, they're going to need to get into an area, and we're going to need to get the public out of those areas. Logistical fire management. So this is thinking, being proactive in the way we do our fire work, and thinking about if we did have a fire start, where would be a great place for us to have a fire break or a fuel management break. So a place that we already can identify before the fire starts, that we could say, hey, if a fire were to start here, this would be the optimal place for us to put a fire break in or a fuel break in. That would have the least amount of impact on the natural environment. Again, you'll see that fire risk in there, and then the adjacent fuel management. So making sure that we are playing in partnership with those landowners that are next to us, especially the larger landowners, or with the fire safe communities. And then finally, you'll see on both sides professional opinion. We want to make sure that we talk about being adaptive. We have a lot of great staff here. We also have a lot of fire staff with the fire agencies. And to allow us to have our professional opinion count towards prioritization, to make sure that the human element is still there when we're looking at these areas. Just want to touch really quick on the workflow. You can see that there's a lot of steps that goes in and involved when we're doing these prioritization. I'm going to start at the very top with the fire agencies coordination meetings. These are something that happens on a yearly basis, where we meet with the fire agencies to talk with them about what we're seeing on the lands, and to get their recommendations of where they feel that it would be beneficial to do some of the fire work. That feeds into our GIS model, which is that prioritization matrix that we have. And you'll see what those maps look like in just a second here. We run those models, and that then is handed off to our land and facilities. And the modeling will show where these tier 1 and tier 2, the most critical areas for us to do work. And the work plan is developed based off of that. So they take a look at these maps and determine where they wish to do the work based off of those mapping. Once we have that, it comes back to natural resources, and where we do our resource surveys. These resource surveys are everything from botanical surveys, wildlife surveys, archaeological surveys, soil surveys. We do all these different surveys, and that helps to develop very specific plan development for the work that we do. So if we are doing a shaded fuel break, a critical evacuation route, a shaded fuel break, we can look at our maps and determine, hey, we're going into a sensitive natural community, and I can provide advice to our land facilities about which trees we should consider retaining and which trees we should consider removing based off of what those surveys show. Once that's all done, it's implemented. During that time, we're monitoring, and then we, based off the monitoring, we decide how we did, and we change our tactic if needed, or we just stay the course. So as promised, some of the maps that we produce. This first one is of Russian Ridge, and this is our ecosystem resiliency map. So this is our ideas behind the work that we do for the natural environments, right? That's our main objective here, is to make sure that our ecosystems have the resiliency in case we have a fire go through. As you can see on here, it doesn't say exactly where to go, but it's highlighting these areas in which it met a lot of the criteria. And then this will be a guide for myself and other natural resource folks to go out and take a look at these sites and determine, is there a project here that we should be doing? So this is done for the entire district, and it can highlight those areas in which, again, like I said, we can go out and do the surveys to determine where we should be putting some of our time and effort into it. This one here is for our enhanced fire management. So this is to get people in and out of areas. And you'll notice that most of them are around roads and trails, which sort of makes sense because that's how we are trying to get people in and out. And so on here, you'll see the tier 1 and the tier 2. And so these are the ones that have met the highest criteria. They had the most criteria in there. And so it's for us to consider to do the work. As a matter of fact, this was used for Highway 35, the critical work that the Fire Safe, in partnership with us and other land management agencies, did through Highway 35, starting at Page Mill, going north to Highway 92. It also identified, and we'll be continuing with further work going south as well, as it goes through Long Ridge that you can see right there, also highlighting these areas of critical. With that, this is where I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Craig Beckman, our area manager, but I will take any questions if you have any questions regarding the planning aspect.
I have one. Can you say what sensitive natural resources? Can you give an example?
San Francisco garter snake. So that's a species that's federally listed as a threatened and endangered species. It's actually endangered. So that's a sensitive natural thing. The sense of natural communities is something that I mentioned earlier. This is a community in which the regulators have determined that it is in decline, and that there's not very many of them, and that they are prone to having impacts to them. So another sensitive natural resource.
Thank you for that. I was thinking in terms of plants and not animals. So
Yeah, it's both. It's both plants and animals.
Right, thanks.
Yep. All right, Craig.
Thank you. It's great. It's very impressive. Let's see. One question is, and I don't know if that question belongs here, but so you said that well, maybe you're going to talk more about the new acres that you do and the maintenance acres that you do. But so how do you, well, at the highest priority ones, you do go back to every year, is that right? Or it's not necessarily?
So it depends on the area that we're doing the work. For enhanced fire management, that's the critical evacuation routes. We have a 5-year return period where we're doing monitoring. Now, that is assuming that there was no invasive species there, and that we did the work, and right after the work, we reviewed it, and we said, yeah, we met the criteria making this safe. And so it prompts us that in 5 years, we'll go back out and remonitor that site. Now, invasive species, part of the the work that we did with the EIR, with the Environmental Impact Report,
Mhm.
talks about the fact that we want to make sure that we're not just doing good for fire, but also for the environment. And so we want to make sure that we are not making the situation worse with invasive species. Kirk sort of talked about this as well. And so natural resource staff will go out and we do what we call EDRR, early detection, rapid response. So we go out to the site after the fact and take a survey of that area to determine what invasive species are there, or any of them sort of taking advantage of the work that we've done. And if so, then we want to make sure that we get on it right away to suppress those invasive species.
Mm.
For forest health, it's usually a 10-year time period that we would wait to go back in and take a look at the site.
Mm. But roadside and such, I imagine it must be more often.
So roadside for a forested environment is every 5 years. A
Every
grassland
5 years,
environment is typically every year because grass grows every year.
Okay,
So between 1 and 5 years, depending on the site conditions.
Mm. Okay, and then, let's see, I guess a coordination with the Fire Safe Council I was gonna ask about. Is that, I know we do that, Los Gatos program with them.
Yeah.
But, do we meet with them every month? I guess they have regular meetings and,
They have regular meetings, and we usually our land and facilities staff, usually our area managers or the FRS. What's FRS?
Good transition.
Yeah, it is a great
that's
transition.
okay.
Right. I'll hand it over to the expert.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, Board. I'm Craig Beckman, the area manager responsible for maintenance operations out of our Skyline field office. I work with 3 crews of 5 field staff and a supervisor. One of those crews, for purposes of this discussion, is primarily focused on vegetation reduction along roads and trails. So where those contribute to access, that relates to the fire safety. My second crew focuses on road maintenance, which typically means culverts, repairing landslides, repairing drainage on the roads to keep those roads accessible for something like an emergency response in a fire or medical aid. And then the third crew that we've only started here in the last couple of years since the wildland fuels reduction program began is under the direction of a field resource specialist, and now has 5 staff in my area that focus almost all of their time on fuel reduction driven by the tier 1 and tier 2 projects that Cody talked about. So as much as I love maps, I love paper, I love flow charts, eventually that hits the ground, and that's what we're going to start taking a look at through this next section. So the forest health projects, as Cody discussed, are a little less intense. So in the left-hand pair of photos, the before photo and the after, there is less fuel there, maybe less dense trees, but it's not going to be the bare ground that you might visualize with a fuel break. But the forest is healthier. A fire should not spread as rapidly through that, but that's not its primary focus. The primary focus is to encourage the forest to be healthier. On the right demonstrates before we do any kind of fuel break or fuel reduction area work, we get out and survey. I think this particular slide shows more of the Kings Mountain manzanita. That's a species of special concern in an area that we'd like to work around. And actually, we're finding generally Kings Mountain manzanita loves disturbance. So we disturb some around it, and the Kings Mountain manzanita actually can do better. So those are the forest health. We do fuels modification for the benefit of the natural resources. And a couple of examples here are the eucalyptus removal site that may not be an immediate threat to any kind of a community or an escape route, but it is removing a species that will reduce the fire danger in that particular area and be better for the natural resources. So the primary reason might be driven by the benefit to the natural resources. We're planning a project in Long Ridge that will do some thinning of the fir forests, and that will improve the forest habitat as the primary purpose, but it will have a secondary benefit of reducing the overall fuels in that region. And well, I don't think we'll look at an exact slide, but we do work along Skyline Boulevard in that region, and then along the Portola Heights Road that goes out into that community, where they do fuel break right along the immediate edge of the road. We'll do some work beyond that to enhance that fuel break. So we kind of combine forest health, fuels modification with the fuel break development to kind of have layers of improvement in the forest and the fire safety as you get closer to escape routes or specific needs. So here's an example of what a fuel break looks like, a fire break. So Cody mentioned the Fire Safe San Mateo County over the last 2 years. They actually have done now more. They've gone from Page Mill south almost, I think they went all the way to Castle Rock, clearing within the Caltrans right-of-way. And a typical Caltrans right-of-way in this area is something like 50 or 60 feet from the center line of the road. So they've been clearing from the road edge out, and oftentimes you'll see a fence there or something like that that delineates where the old right-of-way extended to. So once they did that work, then it became beneficial for us to do the work beyond that road right-of-way up into the Midpen property. So this particular example is in the Russian Ridge Preserve. I think this is down toward the Crazy Pete's Road area. So several things you see here. You know, the first 30 feet going off the edge of the road was done by San Mateo Fire Safe. Then just beyond that, where it looks like a little road cut there, we've been pulling a disc through that area since we acquired the property. There were disc lines being pulled by the previous property owners, and we've continued doing that in those areas. So you'll get reduced fuel along the highway, and then the plowed fuel break. And now we've extended that up toward the top of the ridge, removing brush. This is an area where we hope to get back to doing prescribed fire. So we hope to maintain to some degree with use of prescribed fire. And the long term will mean the state or somebody related to the state will maintain the right of way and keep that fuel clear. Then we will continue the disc line, and then we will be continuing to maintain the brush reduction, continuing up the hill, either through mechanical reduction every few years or potentially through use of prescribed fire. So there's a combination of collaborative cooperation that works to make things like that happen. I think it was Cody who mentioned it, but just in general, access to all of our properties in the event of a fire depends on there being roads. So we'll do some level of maintaining roads to be passable for fire vehicles, to have adequate vegetation clearance along for that kind of access. Then this specific example is in the Coal Creek Preserve, where just before this EIR was done, we were working under the old IPM EIR in collaboration with a grant that came to the California Conservation Corps and inspired by CAL FIRE to say this was a priority location to create a fuel break. We worked down Crazy Pete's Road, up the Alpine Road, and back up Clouds Rest that surrounded a community that's just off of Skyline Boulevard in that area. And this was all done by hand labor at the time, by the CCC crews. And they did a lot of brush removal down this road, roughly 50 feet from the edges of the road, wherever we could get that, all on Midpen property. And now we're 4 years later, figuring out how to maintain that. You know, everything that you clear grows back. So what scale of maintenance? And we have crews out there this year re-trimming, recutting as things come back. Structures, primarily focusing for the moment just on structures that are on the Midpen property owned by Midpen. Around every house, there will be a defensible space zone. We're just starting to talk about adopting the zone 0. That's the 0 to 5 feet zone from a house to get all of the potentially flammable items away and out of that zone. Traditionally, we've maintained from the house out 30 feet as a very reduced fuel zone, you know, very short fuels or very green. And then from 30 to 100 feet, reducing the fuels, but not necessarily as clear as that last 30 feet. In general, the homes that catch fire often are ignited by embers that are blowing in and not necessarily from the radiant heat of the fuel in the immediate proximity of the house. It's possible, of course. So generally, as you get more than that 30 to 100-foot zone, less fuel is good, but the real benefit has to come from making the home more ember resistant. So we are starting to take on some of those tasks. On my place, I put in vents that are going to prevent embers from getting in under the house. You take on some tasks to help improve the ember resistance to that structure. So the farther you get from the house, there's less benefit to managing the vegetation. So this is typically done at all the district residences, and then many of the barn-like structures may not require this clearing, but we'll try to do this around any structures that we'd like to be protected during a fire event. So here's just one look at what it looks like to clear vegetation around a structure. So the view more in the mid distance, the large tree on the left, it has a lot of brush up to the right from that tree. In the photo on the right, a lot of that brush is gone. So that would be a first phase, if you will, to remove that brush out in that zone. And then you'd be maintaining that, mowing the grass down short and things like that when it dries out. So that's a typical look at what structure clearance looks like. Grant funding is one tool. Usually it won't fund clearing brush around your house, but it will fund the larger scale projects. So we have received $4.6 million over the last few years. One of the big ones has been the Coastal Conservancy has funded the purchase of equipment as well as staff time to allow us to grow our staff more rapidly, and then actual on-the-ground clearing. CAL FIRE has been a big sponsor of very large grants. At the moment, two of them, one is the Los Gatos Creek Watershed Collaborative, is mostly CAL FIRE funded. And now the La Honda Community Fuel Break is primarily CAL FIRE funded. So lots of money coming from those to help on the larger scale projects. And then the Wildlife Conservation Board, I believe, is also funding the Los Gatos. Oh, the eucalyptus removal, that was also down Bear Creek way. So we look for those outside resources where we can. Partnerships means we learn skills from them. We work together with them on projects. We listen to their input on appropriate tasks and work with funding where it's appropriate. So CAL FIRE has been a big funder of projects in this region. The Los Gatos Creek Watershed Collaborative has been multiple public agencies working together with funding. The on-the-ground work managed by the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, but they're implementing the project on multiple ownerships within that region. There's the other Fire Safe Councils, the Fire Safe San Mateo, and then the South Skyline Fire Safe Council are all collaborating and bringing together projects on Mid-Penn land where they have opportunities. Fire-wise communities are a growing activity in this area, that the community themselves gets together and organizes their community's fire projects. And the qualification as a fire-wise community can be beneficial for their insurance and similar things, but it also brings those communities together to talk about what is appropriate activity in their community to make it more fire safe. So those are a growing number of communities doing that in our area. And we'll work together with them if there are commitments to clear fuels and somehow that connects to where we are. We'll help extend fuel breaks or work with them on what they're doing in their communities. And then the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network is doing a lot of discussion of how do you deal with something like biomass? You cut down a grove of eucalyptus trees. Now I've got a huge pile of wood there. What do I do with it? And so they're working on methods to deal with biomass, ways that are better managing forests for forest health as well as fire, and ways to monitor what are we looking for as things evolve and change after the work is done. So some of our specific partnerships, we've been working hard with the Conservation Corps. They just left today, I think. The California Conservation Corps that comes out of Watsonville is using the event center as a spike camp. So they've been camped out there for the last 7 days. They've primarily been doing work in the Thornwood Preserve to extend that escape route along Highway 84. These crews, this is what they do. They are out clearing vegetation all the time. They're very good at it. The San Jose Conservation Corps, we have a contract approved by the board to do I think it's $200,000 a year worth of work that's primarily focused on fuel reduction. The San Francisco Conservation Corps came in and it was doing work for you, Cody, on some of the work around the Kings Mountain Manzanita. So they've been doing projects in various locations. And I think they did some of the initial work on the community fuel break in La Honda. So we're trying to do work with these Conservation Corps programs wherever we have opportunities. Los Gatos Creek Watershed Collaborative, we've mentioned already. Multiple agencies involved in it, 1,700 acres on all the different agencies' properties, major grants, $14 million, and they're just headed into, I think, their phase 2 now, the second grant to keep it moving. So just to visualize what's happening there and why this area was identified, the red arrows on the map represent how the wind concentrates into that Los Gatos area, right in the area of Lexington Reservoir. So on those particularly hot, dry wind events where the wind is typically coming out of the north or northeast, it pushes down the valley, it concentrates in this Lexington Basin corridor, and could potentially push a large fire up into those hills. The Lexington fire in 1987 was in those hills above Lexington Reservoir. So by looking at why this area is a priority, relates to that weather pattern, you get a look on this map of the various agencies. It's a little hard to make out on some of them, but everything bounded by blue is San Jose Water District, bounded by green is Midpen. It's hard for me to see the color. Well, it's kind of a yellow-orange color. Is Santa Clara County Parks. So there's multiple public agency ownerships in that area. And then the yellow is indicating where they are doing treatment. So some of the chunks of yellow to the left of Lexington Reservoir are on the Bear Creek Open Space Preserve. And then a lot of the other ones are on the San Jose Water Company lands, headed up toward Lake Elsman and up into that area. So a lot of projects over a broad area that should be very beneficial if a fire were to ignite and have the potential to be moving up that canyon. So this is just an interesting and different view of the topography, how that area lays out. So it's interesting to look at where do they propose to work, how does it lay out on the land, and then clearly the communities in that region that will benefit if there is a fire in that zone from having this fuel reduction already done. So they've, I believe, completed the first grant and part of the second grant, and are now quite a bit more work highlighted in orange, where they'll be doing additional work as they extend up onto the roads up into the Sierra Azul region. And then quite a bit of that's not on Midpen land, but just in general, a lot going on in that area. Yes.
So it appears on this map that a lot of work is on the ridge tops.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
can you speak more to that?
at least as an initial step, where a fire has potential to be contained is often the top of a ridge. The fire burns hot up one side of the ridge. If you can stop it there, that's often a good containment point. So having a fuel break along the top of the ridge has potential to be a place to stop a fire. There's photos from, or videos even from back in the, was it 86, 87, when the Lexington Hills fire burned, of multiple dozers off the top of Loma Prieta Ridge, pushing a huge fuel break. And that was where they stopped the fire in that moment, was the top of the Loma Prieta Ridge. Well, if we can do that work in advance, reduce that fuel along that ridge top, when the fire occurs, in complement with aircraft who can make drops along the top of the ridge, with bulldozers who can scrape some more of the fuel away, it gives you a place to stop a fire.
Understand and appreciate that. And can you put in comparison the fuel break at the top of a ridge with the likely, you will know better than I, the likely more dense growth at the top of a ridge, given it's more sun access and that sort of thing? Is there a greater impact to the natural environment at a ridge top? And I'm not saying not do it. I'm just wanting to understand what the impact is.
That's a great question. I don't know, Cody, if you got any other thoughts on whether there's other ecological benefits.
Cody Cifuentes Winter, Senior Resource Management Specialist. I had talked earlier about the fire logistical areas for us to be able to get in and do the work when we're not in an emergency. And that's kind of the idea here, is that we can get in, we have the surveys done during a fire event. We're not going to be doing surveys, right? The critical thing that the incident commander is going to be thinking about is life and property, making sure we can do that. So if we can install a fuel break in an area, because we already did the surveys and we can make it go where we want it to go, then we have a less impact on the environment. Now, what you're seeing on here does have a lot of ridgetop. But also keep in mind, like Bear Creek Redwoods, we did almost 300 acres at Bear Creek Redwoods. That was for sudden oak death. We had a lot of sudden oak death at that location. And so going in and doing mitigation for sudden oak death by doing a lot of this work. So not all of it is on ridge tops, but quite a bit of the phase 2 is those ridges. But the phase 1, which we just completed, completed about 1,000 acres actually just a couple weeks ago. That was not focused on the ridge tops, but focused on the forest health areas.
And so help me if I got part of this wrong. I'm subject to that. Creating the ridge, the fire breaks at the top of the ridge, there's the stopping the fire aspect of that. And if I understood what you were sort of implying, at least, is that if the fire can be stopped there, you didn't really particularly address the impact on the natural environment, but if the fire could be stopped there, it has the potential for saving or preventing impact on a much greater aspect of the natural environment. Did I get that right?
So if we can do the work before a fire, before there's an emergency, where we can get our surveys done, we can go in and we can take a look at the site and determine where our sensitive habitats are, where those areas we need to protect, and do the work in a way that's ecologically sensitive. We have an effect, and we've seen this on like the CZU fire, where they did work prior to the CZU in areas in which they did not do, where the fire burnt through. And we can see a change in fire behavior and fire severity. And so by doing that work now, we're changing that fire behavior when it does get into these areas where we're going to have less fire activity going on. There's less fuels for it to burn. And so we're getting in there. We are determining where we're putting these fuel breaks now so we can avoid the impacts. Plus, we're reducing those fuel loads so we have, when there is a fire, less severity. And it's easier for CAL FIRE. If they're coming in and we've already have a fuel break that we've installed in there, there's no reason for them to go put a bulldozer on another ridgetop. They can go and say, hey, we've already done work here. And so then they have a place for them to take a stand. It's much easier for them to take that stand.
Thank you for that. It's really helpful, and certainly don't interpret my comments as negative or opposed to this. I'm just wanting to have a more complete understanding of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Back to Craig Beckman. So no, it's a valid point, and giving us time to do studies and make plans definitely is helpful. I'm not sure I was specifically aware of exactly how ridgetops might transition and how the habitats change. Certainly, north-facing slopes, south-facing slopes will have different, vegetation, and there is benefits to being aware of those variations, and fitting it into this program is helpful. All right, just to get some sense of scale of where we have been and where we're going, we're using our CityWorks asset management system to try to document where we do work, how much time we spend on it. It's a combination of information that's in these work orders and information that's in the GIS system. We're not quite perfect on how to read that data yet. So some of these numbers represent a combination of maintenance of existing fuel reduction, like helicopter landing zones, residential defensible space. Some of these areas that we've been maintaining for years will show up in some of this data as maintenance of existing fuel breaks. And then some component of that is new work, and how much is done by Midpen staff, how much is done by contractors, lots of details to get into here. But in general, in the years since this program was put in place here from 2021 to now, in the Skyline area, we've treated 453 acres under the auspices of this EIR. We anticipate in the next roughly 3 to 5 years to complete another 700 acres of planned treatments. In the foothills area, approximately 470 acres of treatment over the last 3 to 4 years. Anticipating doing another 837 acres in the future. The component of this that's the new fuel reduction areas is based on that tier 1, tier 2 data that Cody was talking about earlier. So we take we are required to do 85% of our new fire break work in tier 1 or tier 2 areas. So a lot of that area you see along Skyline Boulevard on the map that Cody showed in Russian Ridge and Long Ridge, that's where my work is focused to be able to get the fuel break work focused on those areas. The forest health management can spread out to other areas. So this is giving you a general idea of where we're at for acres treated per year or treated cumulatively for fuel reduction purposes. So giving you some idea of where we're at for acreage. And with that, I think we're ready for some questions before we move on to the next block.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, I have a hard question. I think earlier I heard mention of like a really aggressive fuel treatment goal of something like 1,200 acres. Was that per year? Was that a goal that I heard? And
It's
so
not necessarily a goal, but it's what's allowed under our EIR. Is that
it's what's
sound about right?
allowed. Okay.
So we have over time, out of all of the district lands, how much acreage is appropriate to treat for fire breaks, that we would like to move toward accomplishing that. But the 1,200 acres is a maximum per year that we're
Okay.
allowed to do.
Got it. I guess I'm curious when I look at the magnitude of this job, it's enormous, the work that you're, the acreage that you're covering, the area that you're covering and treating so carefully. I'm thinking, how do we move more quickly, or do we, to as we need to continue to ramp these efforts up? What needs to happen?
Really good question. Do you want me to take it on, Brian, or would you prefer me to give it a shot?
Well, I'll cover some of that on the back end of this. I mean, what I would say is we have steeply increased our capacity right now. And we'll have to see how grant funds go. The biggest benefit of having a dedicated landowner like the open space district is that we are committed to the reentry. We're committed to the monitoring for invasive species. Because over the years, I've seen tons of these big fire projects go through. The next year, they get invaded with Scotch broom. And then 3 years later, it's just kind of looks the same or worse than it was before. So that we want to take on what we can manage. I think we're, with the creation of the new department, that department will be able to really focus on that field management stuff. I'd like to see where we're at. But as we continue to grow and take on new properties, we'll add to those, the crews that we already have working on it. But we've done the steep ramp up right now. And then we're going to have to evaluate how things are going and then how we can continue to grow in the future. Of course, that's, budget dependent as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer. And my comment wasn't intended as a criticism. It's just
Yeah.
wow, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of entities involved, and the complexity of working on the land, given this environment, it's difficult. So
Yep.
that kind of adaptive and iterative process that you're articulating, I think is
And that's why we spent some time on the prioritization as well, because we're not going to treat 70,000 acres, right? But we're going to get to those high priority zones for the vegetation management, and then we're going to get to those forest health projects. We're really, we're kind of, we're taking them off. There's some major, and particularly some of the invasive forests like the acacia or like the eucalyptus, those you really see that long lasting impact where you've flipped the switch on the ecosystem. And we're also following up to make sure, Pulgus Ridge, right? That was a huge controversial project when we first started doing it. We took a lot of follow up to make sure the eucalyptus didn't come up. That is a much more fire resilient environment now, and also a healthier ecosystem up there as well. So that's the kind of change that we can see for our kind of ecosystems. The fuel management, there's always going to be a lot of annual work. That's where it's really helpful that we've built up our existing crews.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the success metric isn't just acres treated. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, what we bring to it is that ongoing management.
Right. One other question for you, Brian, or Craig, I'm not sure who. Will we be talking about funding and, kind of funding, potential impacts to funding that we're perhaps seeing in the future? Will you be talking about that later?
Yeah, so we don't have a deep dive into it in the presentation. We're actually moving into the visitor services response.
Okay.
So why don't we get through, the bad news is that there is definitely budget crunches on the federal level that's impacting the state and the counties as well. However, there is also an emphasis on fire resiliency and fuels reduction, both through legislative action and then also through continued funding. So I anticipate that there will still be funding out there, and that's where our grants program works with natural resources and land facilities to figure out how we kind of look a few years in the future and apply for appropriate grants, sometimes and most successfully when we do that in partnership.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to that. This is Ana Ruiz, General Manager, and our Government Affairs Program Manager is here today too, but we continue to be very actively monitoring bills and changes at the state level to ensure that these issues around fire grant funding for field management programs and the like continues to be very active and healthy, because that is critical, not just for the work that we're doing and helping our program and helping us expand what we do, but across the state. So that is something that is very much one of our high priorities in terms of our government affairs program.
Thank you.
Yeah, Craig, you spoke about disc lines and you showed the example from Russian Ridge there. Do disc lines as part of the overall strategy change over time, or is that sort of a baseline that those would remain where they've been?
Yeah, disc lines are an interesting issue, a little more complicated than I might have imagined. When we first were acquiring properties, particularly in that area, the ranchers would pull the disc lines every year, and we have continued to do that since. We do find that disc lines can be a vector for introduction of exotics. They can be an erosion control problem. So we have removed quite a few disc lines where, well, one example is Montebello Ridge, where we used to pull disc lines that were quite a ways away from the main road. So instead of pulling those disc lines, now we've cleared the vegetation and said that the road itself that's up there is the fire break. But we now have 50 to 100 feet of vegetation cleared along the road to make that road more effective. We have generally not done new fuel break or new disc lines. And then I was just hearing not too long ago, CAL FIRE was talking about they prefer mode lines to disc lines so that their trucks can access where the disc lines become too soft and difficult to drive. So we haven't reviewed with that in mind. So I find disc lines to be a very effective tool where the potential for a roadside ignition can be stopped very quickly off the side of the road. And we've had a couple examples. Well, one was the plane crash up near Long Ridge, where on one side of the road, the fire burned the disc line and stopped. And on the other side of the road, it took off toward the homes that were there. So the disc line was very effective. We had an arsonist on Page Mill who lit the fire, and then it went out at the disc line, so we went and lit it on the other side of the disc line. But the disc line was effective to stop the fire initially. It was foggy that day, so it didn't go very far. But the disc lines can be very effective in those scenarios where there's a roadside ignition that could spread rapidly into open space, particularly in those grassland areas. So I do find them appropriate in those areas. And I think we managed like 20, 25 miles or something of disc lines district-wide.
Okay, so it maybe has gone down over time, but it's still case by case then. Is that right?
I would say that's where we're at this point. It definitely has gone down over the years, but it is a decision that it's an option tool that we have, and identifying why we do it and then what consequences it has, and consider some options is still potential.
Okay. Also had a question on, you showed the slide from Long Ridge for the Douglas fir management. And there was a line around the outside that was a 1/4 mile buffer. What is the significance of that?
Don't remember that line. Cody, you remember what that is? I can go back to the map if it's helpful, but it might be
It's
helpful.
slide 34.
I'm going to restart this really quick because it's frozen. So just one quick
Okay.
sec. Let me see if this works.
Took the picture of you. I do. Smiled at the wrong time. Froze.
It's frozen. Mm. Restart it again. 100% now.
get a sense of how much time and energy goes into creating these presentations.
And just for folks that are here and also online, we're just having a little technical difficulty with the presentation presenting in the boardroom and I think online as well. Clerk, your call. Do you want to take a break, or would we could do just a verbal presentation on the visitor services side?
Given the time, let's go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, so we'll do a verbal presentation while we work on getting the presentation back. Verbal discussion.
Okay.
I can answer the question though really quickly. That quarter-mile buffer was in regards to our surveys for Marlborough murrelets, which is an endangered bird. And so that was the area in which we did the surveys for that.
Thank you.
Do you know if
Satisfy
that
you?
audio is- Okay, all right.
Okay.
Good evening, board. Chris Bressi, Skyline Area Superintendent. Oh,
No, just to get you to the right place here.
oh yeah. And I'm going to be talking about the district's fire prevention and response efforts. When we talk about prevention, it's not everything you've heard so far. It's the human element of prevention. First, obviously, district rangers enforce a wide range of district ordinances, such as no smoking, no fires, no off-road vehicles, after-hours use, a lot of behaviors that could potentially lead to the ignition of a fire. On high fire danger days, we take a number of precautions. We close public access in all of our coastside protection area preserves that have public access. We also close the campground to stoves, to any heating elements for camping. We notify the campers. They can choose whether they want to continue or not. I think many do, but sometimes those are red flag warnings and they're deciding not to camp anyway because it might not be the safest place to be. We also close the Rancho San Antonio County Park airplane use. So the model airplanes, we close that down, and there are some barbecue grills in that county park that we close. And then on the previous slide, you saw one of our Smoky Bear signs. So we have two of these. This one's at Page Mill and Skyline, and another one at Hicks at Pheasant. And we take the fire danger rating for the day from the CAL FIRE morning reports, and we make sure that our arrow corresponds. This one at Page Mill, we also, on the legs underneath it, South Skyline Fire Safe Council will hang their banners for chipping programs. So we've allowed them to do that. And on red flag days, we have a big banner that says red flag that goes under that. And then we have a lightning preparedness plan. And this is a policy that we developed after the 2020 CZU fire. And just a note on the CZU fire, the lightning storm that caused that fire and other large fires throughout California that we all, I'm sure, remember very well, actually ignited 4 different fires on district property that night. And just want to make the note that we were able to, rangers were actually called out by campers at the campground who wanted to be evacuated as a lightning storm was coming through. And then they started hearing the scanner traffic of fire agencies responding to different lightning started fires. There's one in Russian Ridge, Parisima, don't exactly remember everywhere, but they were all extinguished pretty quickly most of that night. The largest grew to about an acre in Parisima. So a little more on the lightning preparedness plan. So this is a plan to respond to lightning events, which may be forecast or are occurring. So we activate it if there's a lightning activity level, which is part of the fire morning. When they do the weather reports for the day, they have a lightning activity level. It's usually 1, which means none. It can go up to 6, which means like dry lightning, which is a potential for a really bad situation. So we take that into account, or if lightning's actually occurring, we may activate this plan. And then at that time, we close the campground. We'll notify campers ahead of time if possible, or evacuate the campground. And then we assign supervising ranger and some rangers to actually monitor fire traffic and be out and look for fires to start, obviously providing for safety first. We don't want them out in an active lightning storm, but it's just to proactively ensure we can do kind of like we did on the night in August of 2020 and jump on those quickly.
Scott, question about that is, so do we also use kind of the new detection technologies for fire detection?
I have a lightning app on my phone, and I set the radius on that. I don't know that everybody does, but some people may be using that technology. But generally what this is so we can go and out and physically look, and we listen to the fire agency scanners for our various areas. And well, I'm going to need my notes. Yeah, and then if anything's on or near our lands that we hear on the scanner, we will go to that area and check. Yeah.
Because I had heard that the fire set council is experimenting with fire detection. Like, I don't know what it is exactly, you know.
Yeah, I'm being
detection.
advised that we do have a slide on that coming up.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be addressed later. All right. And then we have, obviously, when all these prevention efforts don't work, you know, and fires will start. So we have our reactive management, AKA response. And one thing we want to note is that fires on district lands are very rare, relatively rare. So for last year, there were no active fires on our lands. We had a total of 4 incident reports related to fire that were generated. Rangers responded to 2 roadside fires that did not extend beyond the road right away. One was on Highway 1 and the other on Page Mill. And then we found 2 illegal campfires kind of after the fact, which we obviously try to prevent. And now this is a picture of one of those sites in Rancho San Antonio. Now that we know about this area, obviously we could patrol that and hopefully prevent people coming back from doing that again.
It was the mountain lions.
What is that stuff?
In the picture? Yeah, so actually it's hard to see, but there's a box there that was firewood, like store-bought firewood. There's a small bottle of lighter fluid, like for barbecue. So it's obviously, this was a potentially bad situation. There's some beer cans in there, but luckily, you know, obviously no wildland fires started from that. But definitely the type of thing we need to prevent.
It's a rock?
Oh, that's a large rock, yes. They were safe. They had their little campfire up against a large rock. And then to talk about the training that we do, so the rangers and all the other staff that are in the fire response program complete a basic wildland firefighting course. And then we have to maintain a required fitness standard that we annually test and make sure we are meeting. And then we complete an annual refresher training using certified instructors, which for this year we actually did today. So these, I can get new pictures in here this quick, but I came straight from Rancho over here from our training for this year. And these pictures are from last year, and we do a classroom section with the instructors, give us some refreshers on safety items and factors that affect fire, ignitions, and behavior. And then we do 4 different hands-on stations clockwise from the top in these photos. That's our mobile attack using a district ranger truck with the fire pumper. And then you see handline construction there on the right, emergency fire shelter deployment on the middle bottom. Those are practice shelters. The real ones are made of a metallic material. And then a progressive hose lay is that bottom left one. And that's, you know, progressively attaching hoses as you fight a fire up a hill from a fire engine. Not something we do often, pretty technical in skill. And so we have to refresh on that every year. And then one of the biggest things that we do is we get the responding fire agencies to a fire. So our coordination with local agencies is really important. One of the most important things that our rangers carry are their maps and their knowledge actually in their head. And so we give when we get a report of a fire and we can get there, we give a size up, the size, the rate of spread, what's burning, the best access, and get the responding fire agencies there. Another just a note here is every 4th of July, there's a regional 4th of July fire watch that's coordinated by Palo Alto Office of Emergency Management. And actually San Mateo and Santa Clara County fire and law enforcement agencies participate in that. They even have volunteer ham operators out in certain sites, all just looking to prevent any starts of fires from illegal fireworks or other sources, human sources. And that brings us to the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program master thing here, and the fire pre-plan maps, which I have to give a big shout out to GIS and Nathan Grieg, who's here, our GIS wizard. He's done a lot of the heavy lifting on creating these. And you've heard about them, but let's take a look at one. So this is the pre-plan map for Corte Madera. We have them for every preserve. We have printed large format copies that the patrol supervisors carry, and then they're available digitally, and that allows you to really zoom in and pan around and see quite a bit of detail because there's a lot of data in these files. And we do provide those digital format to the fire agencies on their request. So take a look at this. We'll come back to it. But if we zoom in on the legend, this will show you what type of features are on that map. So as was alluded to earlier, all the roads and trails, we color coordinate by the type of fire apparatus that can access those. So like a green shaded road means a type 1 city fire engine can get on that road. 3 is where the type 3s are, and those are your typical wildland fire engines, so those are really important. The red is just our regular patrol trucks. And then the dark kind of crimson is ATV only, so good to know. And then if you look, there's the aerial photo that all this stuff is laid over. So at a glance, you can see vegetation types, whether you're dealing with a forest or a grassland. You're not going to see the type of forest necessarily or the condition of that forest, but it'll give you a quick idea. Staging areas, water hydrants, tanks, helipad, high transmission power lines. Pretty important to know where those are. And a lot of other features there. The target hazards, go back. So there's one on this map, which is the Kings Mountain School. It's right up towards the top of the map. And it's going to be really hard to see at this scale, but, and then you can see, let me go back here. Sorry, I'm going to switch back and forth. Avoidance areas. So these are Natural Resources Department also have a lot of input on these maps. Water areas or other sensitive habitats that we want to avoid any cutting of fire line or dropping retardant. And so going back to the map, you can kind of see all the creeks. They're highlighted in a buffer zone of either orange or yellow going through there. So those are dozer or aerial retardant drop avoidance areas. And these are living, and obviously we update them as necessary.
Chris, quick question with
Yeah.
these. Are these layers that can be accessed through like a Venza or something? So if you're in the midst of a fire, you can have these layers and know where you are.
Yeah, so the maps are, they are digital. So we have them on our computers through our SharePoint. I don't think they're available on Avenza. Oh, they are. I'm getting a thumbs up from GIS. All right.
Awesome.
So I use them through our SharePoint, and then yes, you can zoom in, you can get a lot of detail. And yeah, there's just a tremendous amount of information crammed on these things.
Yeah, so
That's
useful to be
useful.
able to use them real time.
Yeah.
Know where you're at real time. Avoid what you need to avoid.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then evacuation routes. So in most every situation, the best way to evacuate from a fire is on a paved, maintained road downhill, right? But we do have some public roads and areas that we've done collaborative fuel reduction, and we do collaborative fuel reduction, as you've heard, on many of those public roads to keep them as viable escape routes. But we do have 4 interior preserve routes designated, and those are in El Sereno, La Honda, Long Ridge, and Thornwood. So those are signed, and we maintain them to a level to be a little bit better than most of our other drivable roads and trails, and they are designated for local neighborhood escape. And they're short distances, and they should be as a last resort. We always tell people to follow what their fire agencies are telling them in terms of evacuation. And I think there's a video on that one. I'm going to go back. So don't get ahead of ourselves. Uh-oh. Anyway, any questions?
Great work. As a neighbor, I appreciate it.
All right, I think I turn it back to Cody. Sorry, starting.
We're supposed to automatically start.
Good evening again. Cody Cifuentes Winter, Senior Resource Management Specialist. I'm going to talk a little bit about our prescribed fire program, which is part of our fire program. So what you're seeing up on the screen right now, this was our first fire that Midpen conducted since 2010. So this was done the fall of 2024, October 2024, so about 7-8 months ago. And this was done up at Cherry Springs. So the prescribed fire plan, which is a section within the fire program, really detailed how we go about doing that work. It's a programmatic, meaning that it's a pretty high level. It allows us to do prescribed fire, but not immediately. What it does is it sort of sets out, here are the parameters of how we go about doing that. We need further information before we actually do a prescribed fire, and I'll get into that in just a second. But a prescribed fire is a fire that we deliberately set under controlled conditions. So as you can imagine, during a wildland fire event, that's an unplanned event where we have the fire has started already, and we really don't know what's going on in that certain area. So we have no knowledge about the weather that's going to be happening that day when that event happens, right? So a prescribed fire, when we write these plans, they are very, as described, prescriptive. It says we will do the fire only under certain environmental conditions. And there's 3 major conditions that we're looking at. The first one is temperature. The second one is the relative humidity, how much moisture is in the air, and thus how much moisture is actually in the vegetation as well. And then finally, wind. How fast is the wind and where is it coming from? So we make sure that when we're doing these events that they're done under very strict environmental conditions. And so that way we have a better idea about how the fire is going to behave. We use it to restore ecological processes, and to reduce accumulative live fuels. And Kirk sort of talked about the objectives at the beginning of the presentation regarding, when and how do we use prescribed fire. So there's 4 different main prescribed fire objectives. The first one is a restoration burn. This is where the focus is for the natural environment. I had mentioned about Kings Mountain manzanita. There's other species also that they need fire for them to reproduce. Kings Mountain manzanita is the easiest one to mention because it's the one that's most well known. But there's also other biological factors that we want to use prescribed fire for to cycle the nutrients. Dried grass, you might see a lot of dried grass. It creates what we call thatch. And that's this layer of dead grass that's in a grassland and can actually stop the germination of a lot of different species. And so if we use fire to burn away that thatch layer, it opens up the ground for germination of other species. We can also do it for a fuels reduction burn. So this is typically in areas where we've already done a fuel reduction and we want to use fire to maintain that site. So we can use fire to maintain the amount of fuels that are in a certain area. The third one is a cultural resource benefit. This is only done in conjunction with a tribe, with one of the Native American tribes. So a Native American tribe might have interest in doing a prescribed fire for a certain reason, usually to enhance what we call ethnobotany. They might want to do basket weaving, in which fire is used to promote a certain plant growth. And so then we can do a prescribed fire, then the Native Americans can come in and do a harvest of that plant species for their use. And then the last one is a training burn. This is to get our staff used to fire and to learn how to work with fire. And it's also to make sure that we can work well with our partner agencies. There's nothing like showing up to a fire event in which you have multiple agencies, and guess what? Your radios don't communicate with one another. Let's figure that out beforehand to make sure that we can communicate and learn how to work together during these events. Now, this might look like when we do burn that it's just for one particular reason, and that's not true. We can have a fire that is a restoration burn that is also used for fuel reduction. We also might be doing a training aspect of it as well. So they're not mutually exclusive of one another, but when we do a burn, it is always, we have a primary objective with some co-benefits that go along with it. I talked about how the fire program allows us to do that prescribed fire, but there's additional things that we need to do besides just having the words within our program about prescribed fire. We have to create that burn plan and the SMP, that's a smoke management plan. These are very site specific. So this is where we have a fire ecologist or a fire professional going out to a site, and they are drawing up the plans. Where is the burn going to be happening? Why are we doing that burn? That weather prescription, they will dictate what does the weather need to be for us to be able to do that. And then that contingency strategies, that's about the people that we have on site. Who do we need to have on here? Can we do this burn with just 3 people? Probably not. And it's going to lay out in that burn plan who needs to be there. What type of burn boss do we need to have? How many engines do we need? Do we need a water tender there or not? So providing us the framework with what do we actually need to have to pull off a successful and safe burn within the site. So I just want to show a few photos of the burn that we did at Cherry Springs. This first photo that you see here, you can see that smoke rising. When we start to do a burn in the morning, we need to call in to some of the regulating agencies. That includes getting the okay from CAL FIRE and get an okay from the air board. But one of the first things we do is a test burn. We light a very small fire, and the idea here is to see what happens with the smoke. How does it rise? Does the wind carry it away at a certain height? So we can understand, is the smoke going to go where we think it's going to go? That will dictate or help us understand and manage the smoke to make sure that the smoke goes where we want it and not into, say, down to like Los Gatos or something like that. So the very important, one of the first important things that we do is that test burn. So here you'll see a couple different things that are going on, starting with on the upper left where we have a burn that's going up the hill. You can see that we did some work prior to a burn, including limbing up that tree that's right there to make sure that the fire stays on the ground and doesn't get up into any of the trees. You can see where we have folks that are lighting smaller fires, burning out some of the areas in which didn't burn through the broadcast burn area. You can see the complete black line at the bottom area there where we've completed the burn throughout the area. And then on the bottom left-hand side, we're going through what we call mop-up. We're going through the area, making sure that the fire is completely out before we leave a site. So walking through the area, checking all the smoke that's coming up, making sure there's no live embers. Even after that, though, we don't leave the site. We actually will station folks here. Usually ranger staff will stay overnight, checking the fire throughout the night to make sure that it is completely out. So here's some of the crew after a hard day's work. If you can imagine, the equipment that they're wearing right there is much heavier than normal equipment. We're talking 3 to 4 times the weight in terms of just the clothing that you're wearing. Plus, you got that helmet, you got a backpack on. This is not for the faint of heart. And as was described, we had the fire refresher training this morning, in which we practiced all these skills. It is hot, dirty work and a lot of fun. Going into the monitoring, we do have a very robust monitoring plan, which we're looking at not just the objectives of are we reducing fuels in an area, but are we having the impact that we thought we would for natural resources? And when I say impact, that's both positive and negative impacts, right? We want to see, we want to try to make sure that we are getting as much of the positive impacts as we can and lessening the negative impacts. And that's what our monitoring program does. And it is used for future projects when we go to do work to sort of help to fine tune the way we do our work. So we monitor sites before, during, and after treatments. This is regardless if we're just doing manual removal of stuff or if we're using prescribed fire. And it really helps us to determine, are we meeting our objectives for what we are doing? And it really promotes that adaptive management that we've discussed. Just some of the things that we look at: biodiversity and wildlife presence. Did we get any wildlife mortality? Was there any special status species before, during, or after that we saw? For the Cherry Springs burn, where there was potential for western pond turtle. So we did a western pond turtle survey right before the burn to make sure there wasn't any turtles that were in that area. We're checking for soil and erosion. And then, did we reduce those fuel loads? Our monitoring protocol is pretty robust, and it's based off of science. We went through during the development of the program and captured as many of the different protocols that are out there. This is not really meant for you to review, just to know that there's a lot of data, a lot of protocols that we have set in place. And natural resource staff, along with our land and facility staff, will go through and determine which of the protocols we want to carry out for each one of the treatment methods that we're doing. And this, the stereo photo series, I just want to touch on really fast. This is a really cool thing for folks that maybe not have the experience of doing vegetation surveys. It provides a very quick way for someone to actually do an assessment. And these include photographs of certain habitats. So this is just an example. This is done over in East Bay. It's a eucalyptus forest, and it's showing a certain fuel load, which we can translate by how much fuels are there, about what the fire might do, and when we might need to have fire management. So as we go through these photographs, you'll see that they'll progressively get more and more fuels that are throughout the site. And so when we go out to a site, if someone has these, they can look at their photographs and say, hey, this matches what I'm seeing right now, and they can report that back to natural resource staff or to a land and facility staff to let us know where exactly the forest is at, without having to have somebody who has gone through a bunch of training. So it's a very easy, quick guide. Getting into asking about the technology, here's that fire sensor that you had alluded to earlier. This is in collaboration with Palo Alto Fire and Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. And we have these at Montebello and Los Trancos. And they are there to help to detect at the very early stages. These ones in particular monitor weather and air quality conditions. And then there's also these Alert California, which are cameras that are usually attached to actually PG&E lines. And you can see there's quite a few in our area. And these are just showing you, and you can click on these as live feeds. Anybody can do this to show you what is going on out in the area. So this is one from Jasper Ridge. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Brian Malone.
All right. And I'll continue to move quickly through here, so we'll have a little time at the end if there's any additional questions or public comment. But we've come a long way. So we've always done the basics, and now we're really upping our game and have done a lot more. Just to look at some of the stats just from last year, we do have room that we can do more under our CEQA clearance, but we've accomplished a lot just in the last year. And that, the basic thing we'll always be looking at, can we maintain this if we take on more? And then just to look specifically at what our staffing growth has been. So we've added 4 positions between 2020 and 2024, 2 resource specialists, field resource specialists, and they're working, managing, supervising our 2 crews, as well as doing contract work and managing contracts. So that was a new position that's really critical to implementing resource management projects and fuel management projects. And then we also added 2 lead open space technicians that can go out by the crew, just leading a crew themselves, or sometimes that lead will be working with, say, the Cs that we were talking about earlier. Also, just to quickly mention, in addition to getting work done, that's a really important pipeline, the California Cs, the San Jose Cs. And we actually have employees on staff now that have gone through those programs. Also, getting more efficient in using equipment to do our work. So you see on the right-hand side there, the boom truck. We used to have to contract out for all our boom work, so now we have a boom truck. There's a picture of the disking tractor that we've had for a while, but we've upgraded that equipment over time. That does those disc lines. And then the boom flail on the tractor on the left-hand side. And then we have some more pictures here as well. These remote control mowers are a really new piece of equipment that allows us to do, like, the typical road and trail work had been just on the edges, and now we can go onto steep slopes with these. And as you can see, the picture where the person is on a flat slope there, but they don't have to be on the equipment. They can just manage the equipment with a remote control a lot safer. And then our standard mowing as well. And some of this equipment was funded through those grant funding to help us get it online, and then we're going to maintain and keep that equipment in our toolbox. All right, so I kind of moved through that quickly. I do want to mention our fire program now. Our last negotiations with the FEA, we added more of our open space technicians and the lead open space technicians on those resource management crews into the fire program. So we now have 63 full-time employees in our fire program that are available both for response, for fires, and then critically for expanding our prescribed fire program. And then we have 14 patrol trucks, 2 water trucks that carry 1,800 gallons, 4 patrol trucks that are outfitted with slip-on pumpers. We have more than that for generalized patrol. And then we also, just quick stats, 295 miles of fire roads, right? So and are aware that we have over 250 miles of trails, but we actually have more roads that aren't publicly accessible. A huge example would be Loma Prieta Ridge that we maintain in brush with no public access. Maybe in the future, the to the Sea Trail, we'll probably run along that route. 26 miles of disc lines, 13 miles of brushed or mowed lines, like the example through Montebello. Shaded fuel breaks, defensible space around 125 buildings, residences and outbuildings, and 15,500 in grazing leases, and of that, 9,000, approximately 500 acres of land that are actually grazed by cattle. So all this contributes a lot of ongoing work and continue effort to work and grow. These collaborative grant projects will be really important going forward. I do expect, for example, we're tracking the Prop 4 grant funds. They were just, the first allocation was announced. The vast majority of that, you may have seen that we sent it out in the district updates of media, is going to Southern California, but there is a certain amount of that money that is going to the California Coastal Conservancy, which, as you saw, we got some money for equipment and for the work done up on Skyline. So we will be competing for those grants with other folks as well. We always, as people, I think, tend to be reactive. So at least the initial flush of money is going to agencies in Southern California, but we'll also be looking forward to future allocations. Yeah. Do you have any questions, or if not, then we can go to see if there's any public comments. Yeah.
If you go back to the last slide, please. The area in the bottom right photo, how big is that area that's being disked there? It looks huge.
So I mean, I don't know the location. I mean, the little area that we're looking at is relatively small, right? But I would imagine that's coming off a trail or a road, and we're clearing the brush on that. But I don't know if anyone can speak to that specific picture. Okay, so and if you've been up, there's a lot of coyote brush encroachment on what it used to be just a grassy hillside in Windy Hill, and that project along Skyline extended into Windy Hill Open Space Preserve and did a lot of brush reduction. It looked pretty rough at first, but everything has come back quickly. And we're seeing a lot of new vegetation in there, and even though the coyote brush is growing back, it is much reduced, and that for a period of several years, probably with some sort of reentry like 5 years, that fuel load will be much reduced.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Is there any public comment on this presentation? All right.
President Seer, I do have 2 virtual.
You do have? All right.
Okay, the first person we're going to call is Betty Caton.
Hi, first of all, let me thank you guys for just doing a great job protecting nature and everything. I'm in live in Los Altos Hills. I have open space. I love seeing the mountain lions and bobcats and whatnot coming through the property. So thanks for doing that. Tonight, the Los Altos Hills had our fire resiliency meeting. It was from 6 to 8 tonight. We couldn't attend both. I would just request in the future, it'd be nice if we tried to coordinate so they didn't hit at the same time. Because Jay from Los Altos Hills, that's coordinating our fire resiliency. He wanted to be here and talk about that. I'm also speaking not only as a resident of Los Altos Hills, but I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Pyrologics. And what we do is fire modeling. We're hired by the National Forest Service to do fire modeling on how things go. By the way, I'll ask, since there's only 2 comments, if we could not do the 3 minutes, I think I'm going to need 3 or 4. So please don't cut me off. The canyon that entails the Roos Ridge Trailhead that goes from Roos Ridge Trailhead all the way up to Windmill Pasture, there's a tremendous amount of overbrush in there. About half of that's on my land. The other half is on open spaces land. I spoke to Michael Jurek at Rancho back in 2017 to ask for permission for us at our own expense to be able to cut brush, not only on our property, but up to the ridge going up to Windmill Pasture. He said he would allow a chipper to be brought into Roos Ridge, but we needed to get the fire department to make a request to do that. And what I'm asking is there a way that you can work with Los Altos Hills and or with me and the neighbors on Roos Ridge to coordinate? We don't mind paying for it, but we need to get access onto the property for a chipper and get permission to go do that. So I don't know who we would talk to about doing that. I heard on this call that you can only handle doing X acres this year. I don't know if that's due to money, but I'd request that the Roos Ridge area here, and then as well, if we can do some more clearance along the interface between Los Altos Hills and Midpen. So I'd ask when you get contacted by Jay Bradford from Los Altos Hills, please see what you can do to work with for him. Also, is there a way we can get a copy of the deck? I'd like to share it with the task force that Los Altos Hills has for our fire clearance. Oh, I made it under 3 minutes.
So just to respond, the video recording of this meeting will be posted online starting Friday. So if you go back to the website for our board meetings, it will be posted starting this Friday. And I believe, District Clerk, we have their contact information. Is that correct?
We do.
We do. So we do have your contact information, and we'll follow up with your first question.
And the next speaker is Brandon Stewart.
Good evening, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Brandon Stewart, Land and Facilities Manager here. I'm so sorry I couldn't join you in person tonight, but Craig did a fantastic job presenting for LNF. Thank you, Craig. Being a part of this amazing team has been such an honor and highlight to be a part of over the last 4 years. I couldn't resist to give thanks and gratitude to those who have made this program such a success. As Craig mentioned earlier, all of the Land and Facilities staff play a role in supporting Mid-Penn's goals and objectives related to wildland fire resiliency. However, I would especially like to thank those staff who have made such a tremendous contribution to the growth and success of specifically the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program. So here comes my Oscar-inspired appreciation list of folks I'd like to spotlight. I'd like to begin by thanking my staff in LNF, starting with the SFO staff, who include Craig Beckman, Christian Bonner, Steve Davidson, Brett Snyder, Grace Vanelli, Tim Sandage, and Joe Flewelling. Next, I'd like to highlight the FFO staff consisting of Michael Gorman and his team, including Chelsea Young, Jessica Vizina, Kyle Putnam, and Brian Fair. And then rounding out the LNF team, I'd like to thank Matthew Shapiro. Next, I'd like to thank the NR team with special thanks to the man with the plan, my personal Yoda when it comes to wildland fire resiliency, Cody Cifuentes Winter. I'd also like to thank the GIS team with my deepest thanks for all of our outstanding visuals, dashboards, and just constant digital innovation to Nathan Gregg. I'd also like to thank Public Affairs team with special thanks to Leanne Gesner for helping us tell our story, and Josh Hug, who advocates for us in Sacramento. And finally, I'd like to say thanks to the grants team with special thanks and highlights to Danny Morrison, Caitlin Henrias, Carol Shimke, and with deepest gratitude, I would also like to thank our past grants team member, Deborah Hurst. We were pants on fire, pun intended, at the genesis of this program, but we are a well-oiled machine now, as been highlighted tonight. To sum up, because I hear the offstage music beginning to play in the background, the Wildland Fire Resiliency Program has truly taken the full support of all these incredible, professional, and passionate individuals, and I couldn't be more proud and humbled to support their success and the success of this program. I know this is irregular, and I thank them every other Friday at our working meeting. But if there are any of the staff that I just mentioned in attendance, please stand and be recognized. We would not be at this level in the program without you. With my deepest gratitude, thank you all very much. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The next person, I'm having a little difficulty interpreting. It looks like Bello or H-O-U-N-G. I'm not sure. I
Sorry.
apologize.
No, that's all right. My writing isn't terribly legible. My name is Brian Hennig. I own 20 acres off Montebello Road. It's next to the Ridge Trail and Macy's Peak, and seems fairly insignificant because it's 20 acres. But I'd like to find out if I can get an assessment from the district as to whether I have fire issues on the property. It's full of scrub brush and oaks, but it's a box canyon, so I'm not sure if any mitigation would have any effect at all. But it's just a question as whether the district can help me with that to do an assessment.
Maybe what we could do is we have your contact information, I believe, or if you haven't provided it completely, you can provide that to the district clerk and we can follow up with your question because I'm not sure. I think I understand what you're asking, but we have to take a look and see if it's something that we can provide and give guidance to.
Okay, because in your flyer, you're talking about creating a defensible space, and that's what I want to make sure that the property we have is not endangering other areas in the park.
I see. We can take a look at that, and we do have a defensible space permit program as well for local residents that they can utilize to help expand their defensible space area to meet the 100-foot distances if it needs to go onto district land. So we can discuss that with you as well.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to point out is that I received your notice Friday, the 18th, on a holiday weekend. So essentially meant that there was 1 or 2 days notice for this meeting. You might want to get these notices out sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. And staff will connect with you on your questions.
So sorry, can I interrupt? Before the meeting's over, can I just confirm your email address?
Sure.
Just to address a couple issues that were raised. So one, we do coordinate annually with the Los Altos Hills. So we prioritize projects with them. And that's probably the best avenue for residents to suggest input that will get into our prioritization because we're given the kind of the biggest rating to what the fire agencies are telling us is good. And one of the projects we're working with Los Altos Hills is fuel clearance along the main road through Rancho that kind of runs adjacent to those communities out there. So that's something we've completed some work on, and there's more work to be done. And then for evaluating your own property, particularly as far as defensible space, your resource should be your local fire agency. The district wouldn't be going onto other properties and evaluating fire safety, but that is a priority. And sometimes in high fire danger areas, they will just show up on your property to do a fire inspection. But most fire agencies, if you request an inspection, will come out and do that.
Okay, we have run a little bit over our original time frame, and it's been a very powerful 2 hours plus. So I'm going to request a 5-minute recess. Okay, well, if there are no objections from members of the board, we'll take a 5-minute recess. And let's make it 7 and we'll get back at 7:15. Break. If we can return to our seats and the audience can choose a seat for yourselves, and we'll be able to proceed. We have a quorum. So good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. I'm Jed Sear, President of the Board of Directors. This meeting is now called to order, and I have 7:16. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Gleason?
Here.
Director Christine Tucker? Here. President Seer?
Here.
Director Holman?
Here.
Director Kishimoto? Here. Director McNiven?
Here.
Thank you, and Director Ripple is absent.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any comments from members of the public on matters within the jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda?
President Seer, I do not have any.
All right. The public comment period is now closed. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker?
Yes.
President Seer?
Yes.
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto?
Yes.
And Director McNiven?
Here.
Thank you, motion passed. Thank you, motion passes 6-0.
Does any member of the board wish to have any of the items pulled from the consent calendar?
No, but I have a question.
Question, go forward.
Yeah, my question is on item number 7, and it has to do with the attachment, the map. And according to the key, and we don't have a contract or anything to confirm this with, according to the attachment, it has a peach kind of colored proposed debris removal, but in the text of the staff report, it talks about demolition and debris removal. So there's no differentiation between debris removal and demolition on this map. And I'm just wondering how a contractor is going to know.
We're going to have a response here in just a moment from staff.
Good evening, board. My name is Ivana Young, Engineering and Construction, Capital Project Manager 3. Good to see you again, Director Holman. The distinction will be made in the scope documents and the project documents, wherein there will be a matrix detailing exactly which structures will be removed. So the view map that you have in your attachments is not merely the only document in the contract documents. So it'll be very clear to the contractors which debris structures will be removed.
Can I suggest that in future staff reports, that there's a differentiation made? Because, for instance, if we're looking at buildings that we know we want to keep, it still has debris removal. But again, there's no differentiation between debris removal and demolition. So I'm just asking for future staff reports for similar or whatever items, that there's a differentiation, a delineation, because again, we don't have access to the contracts.
Certainly, we'll make that more clear in the future.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, on item number 3, I appreciated all the details that were given there, because there were a lot of significant changes. Yeah, so I guess it's because of, Bear Creek and other things, but a lot of changes, and I just wanted to thank staff for the details of the things changing the status.
I have just one item. We returned from closed session and there were no reportable items during that session. I forgot to mention that earlier. Okay, then may I have a vote?
President Seer, I'm sorry, we didn't have a closed session last board meeting.
I'm sorry, the special board meeting that we just had.
It wasn't a closed session, it was a special.
It was special but
Mhm.
not closed.
Yes.
You're correct, and I'm incorrect. Okay, we got it. Thank you very
Mhm.
much. Appreciate that. Okay, so we are ready for a vote on the consent calendar.
Move approval.
I'll second.
And I'll just confirm really quick to see if we have any public comment. We do not. Thank you. So moved by Director Kishimoto and second by Director Gleason. Thank you. Director Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker?
Yes.
President Seer?
Yes,
Director Holman?
Yes.
Director Kishimoto?
Yes.
Director McNiven?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
thank you. And we now have may we have the staff presentation for agenda item number 8.
Hello, it's Lori Lowe, Public Affairs Manager. Thanks for having me here tonight. Okay, so I'm here to give an informational update on public affairs activities for 2024 for the fiscal year and calendar year, and then also an informational update on the proposed departmental growth model. So before we begin, I just wanted to kind of recenter us, remind us of the vision for the future of MidPen, which includes forging powerful and diverse coalitions and partnerships and engaging all community members, imparting the importance of our work, the conservation, resource protection, and natural experiences, and really building unity around those shared open space values and experiences. So, oops, went up the wrong way. So how does public affairs go about doing this? And we have our core work, which is really 4 streams. In our governmental affairs program, we focus at all levels of government from local, regional, state, and federal. It's looking at policy development, of course, working on legislative monitoring, analysis, advocacy, stakeholder and coalition engagement, and advocating for funding for our projects and efforts. And then we have our editorial stream, which includes our PIOs, media relations, traditional communication streams, and our editorial calendar, narrative development. Under outreach and digital, that includes our great community partnerships program, all the tablings and community events, sponsorships, as well as things like social media, website, our online store, and e-newsletter. And then under administrative, our admin assistant is really special in that they really serve the whole district with their work. They do they do the ombudsperson program and memorial requests, as well as Photo Shelter, which is the archive of photos for the whole district. And then we do have contracts in public affairs, on-call contracts that all the departments tap into, such as printing, design, photography. So they help with the tracking of that. And then we also have a public affairs staffer who is assigned to each preserve. So any communication needs in that preserve, that staffer handles, including the projects, the CIAP projects that fall in that preserve. So that is our core work. Oops, keep going the wrong way. So just looking quickly at fiscal year 24 high-level performance metrics year over year, you might see a little bump in 22-23 actuals, and that's because of the 50th anniversary, where there was a significant increase in resources that were allocated and utilized. But I would say for fiscal year 24, public affairs met or exceeded all its targets. And so the first one is the total reach of our comms channels, and that's 3.5 million. And then the percentage of ideas that were pitched that actually became stories, 71%. Dropping down to the last one, the percentage of governmental agency partners engaged, 84%, and we are a big district. And then the third one, all of the others I'll touch on in a little bit more detail, but the third one is regarding InfoAt. And this InfoAt really serves, it's the direct communication channel for addressing public inquiries, feedback, concerns, and we handled over 840 InfoAt inquiries with a 92% response rate to actually resolve those within 2 business days. So a huge shout out to Stephanie and to Gabby, our new public affairs admin, who have been handling those. So our governmental affairs, sure.
It's not a, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a question, it's a comment. It's your second line item here. Percentage of ideas pitched to media that become stories. Having some background in that arena, that's enormous.
Yeah.
It's enormous. Huge congratulations. I mean, that's not that easy to accomplish. I'm hats off, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, huge thanks to Leanne and Ryan for all their hard work in that area. Yeah. So our governmental affairs program, it was a big year. You know, reviewed over 1,000 bills in 2024 and then identified specific ones to take action on. And 4 out of 5 of the priority ones were signed into law by the governor. And, you know, it was the seminal SB 867 that led to the 10 billion Prop 4. And part of that was the disadvantaged communities definition, which made Midpen and the region eligible for more funding. And Prop 4 included 180 million for wildlife crossings and 3 billion in total allocations that Midpen can access. So that was a very big year. And we were asked to give primary testimony for a couple of those bills as well that were priority 1. And then the relationship building, the delegation events. It was an election year, so we did candidate tours, and there was 5, and we were able to do a project tour. Thanks, Josh, with U.S. Senator Padilla, and then walk and talks where our state assembly member and state senator Becker and Pellerin, respectively, were able to bring their constituents out to our beautiful preserves, and so the constituents were able to experience the preserves, and the delegation members were really able to experience the value and beauty of them. And then work is not done. There's several coalitions at the state and regional level that we are really engaged in that help shape the policy work and, again, build those key relationships. So wonderful work, Josh. Okay. So media highlights, going back to what Director Holman was talking about. So we did at least, at minimum, a monthly press release or pitch, and then all but 3 resulted in successful placement in diverse media outlets. And then this is a really great stat too, 83% of our newsletters generated media stories. And responding to inquiries resulted in dozens of additional stories. Sorry, I'll keep going given the time. And our beautiful publications. So, as we know, newsletters provide a consistent and direct line of communication with audiences to share our district news, our projects, our successes, and foster a sense of community. They also drive traffic to the website and boost engagement. So our electronic newsletter, Plug into Nature, comes out every month. So we had 12 issues, 25,000 subscribers. And then our print quarterly, which I really haven't seen other newsletters like it. It's just gorgeous. And you can see from some of the comments, the appreciation from the recipients. We also had an exciting year of releasing the Preserve Guide. It was launched, and it really showcases the full range of district open space offerings. People sometimes get confused if they're, whose preserve or park are they in? And so this really allows them to see, oh, I really like this preserve. And wow, Midpen has all these other preserves available. So it includes the maps, the history, the flora and fauna of 25 preserves. And 10,000 copies were given away at events to partners, libraries, and they continue to go like hotcakes. And so, and it's also been viewed quite a bit on our website. And I can't help but, dive into this quote a little bit, because this person that, I think they captured it. They said the quality of this preserve guide is truly outstanding. They haven't seen anything like it. It's chock full of useful information, extremely well done. It's an example of innovation and leadership, and documents our outstanding preserve system that's been created by Midpen. Other publications, new brochures were created, included an English-Spanish Coastside General Overview to enhance district communication efforts. And then we updated 6 brochures to ensure all the content remained relevant and aligned with current messaging. And then our outreach program, in which we've steadily grown. So we were able to table at 44 key public events, reaching approximately 4,000 people. And I think, thank you to all of you for going to these events, helping at them, tabling, representing us. And I think that you all know that they provide invaluable face-to-face interaction with the communities, and that builds direct communication, trust, It allows for meaningful feedback and conversation and raises awareness of the district and our mission. So thanks to Natalie, and this is a 25% increase from 2023, and 20% of these events were focused on the co-side and 10% were related to requests from board members or leadership. Another area that's really exciting is our partnerships program. And these really allow us to further deepen relationships in a very intentional way. The board set a goal to expand educational programming to reach underserved communities and really recognize the importance of engaging youth and family and seniors and historically underserved groups. So the partnership program is really at the heart of that. It engages surrounding communities and through enriching outings and events that are actually provided by the partners that work with underserved communities. And it allows us to reach those diverse audiences and really give the boost that might be needed to get to the preserves. And it addresses barriers such as transportation, language, and provides other resources needed for a comfortable outing. And it's designed to allow for the organic building of relationship through 3 tiers of partnership and financial support. So yeah, hopefully on your individual screens, you can see it a little bit better, but these are our partners, our partnership program partners in 2024. And so the bottom ones are tier 1, and tier 1 is really a pilot tier. It's a stipend of $2,500 for one event planned by the community partner with assistance from PA staff. And the stipend's typically for transportation and equipment, food or marketing, or even a chaperone. And it's really, this pilot is crucial for developing new relationships and strengthening our place in the surrounding community. And by starting small, we can identify which partnerships are most effective and have the potential for growth and serve new constituencies or constituencies the district would like to better engage with. Tier 2, expand on the relationships with successful pilots, and this is a deeper collaboration, and the budget for those are between $5,000 and $20,000, and it involves formal contracts, outreach goals, and deliverables, and then it really solidifies Midpenn's place as a partner collaborator and teammate for investing in the sustainability of the partner organizations and their benefit to the district. And then tier 3, there's just one right now, Latino Outdoors, but it's a multi-year commitment with increased funding and support. It's deeply collaborative and significantly benefits both partners in community outreach, mutual content creation, speaking engagement opportunities, and it establishes Midpenn as a regularly recognized primary partner for those organizations. So just a couple of comments from some of our partner organizations about the value of this partnership program and a couple of photos from those outings and events. I will skip over the video too. So I have a number of slides on our social media efforts because social media, as we know, is ever evolving. And we revised our strategic social media plan in summer and fall of 2024. And so what we found after analyzing the different platforms was that before we had a very generic approach to all the platforms, and we thought that we could really strengthen our overall impact by focusing on platform-specific goals and strategies and success metrics. So we're now creating and executing content plans that are tailored to the unique user demographics of the platforms and functionalities. So an example of this is Instagram Reels. So Reels are short videos. They're usually engaging, about 5 seconds to 3 minutes, and they can incorporate music and effects and creative editing tools. And they're really Instagram's most effective tool for reaching new audiences because it's not just your followers that might see it. It can be broadcast to larger audiences and non-followers. So, and then another aspect of the strategic plan was really highlighting the people behind the work. And so we really wanted to showcase the care with which we do our work and increase public understanding and support for the process of the work as well. And so we first began implementing this with the Bear Creek Redwoods Phase 2 opening, where we featured 6 staff members, from various departments. And so they were able to speak to cleanup and invasive species removal and trail building and courtesy while at the trails. And so you can see just a couple of comments back from the public engaging with us on these. Oops, let me see if I can get more in there. Okay. Yeah. All right, and then LinkedIn, we are really using that platform to highlight the agency's accomplishments and breadth of work, and we're really trying to position MidPenn as a thought leader and encompass each strand of our braided mission. So you can see some of the clips here, and we have a couple of awards, GIS, planning, budget and finance, they're all represented. We have a ranger giving a presentation at a conference, and Anna also being a panelist. So it's a great place to showcase our leadership. So the plan was, as you know, only implemented in the fall, so it's hard to get, robust data and metrics over that time, but we can see early signals of our new approach. And so we did create 26 reels during that time, and we saw a 48% increase in engagement on Instagram, on Facebook, 450% increase in reach. And on those 2 platforms, a 67% audience increase. And some of these are due to some trending or, viral posts, but that was all because of our new approach. And then on LinkedIn as well, we see a 93% increase in impressions and views per post, and then a 35% increase in engagement rate. Oh, yeah. So that's one of our Instagram ones that had to engage. There's some of the comments that we were getting. On the website, we made some updates based on feedback we received from both the public and internally. So let's see if my mouse can get there. Oh, maybe you can't see it. So on the far left, we created new navigation drop downs. So get involved didn't exist before. We had a very long drop down on another item. And then volunteer, the sub menu item, didn't exist before. So now there's a really easy way for people who want to start volunteering with us to find that information. Also, with our GIS team doing such amazing work, we wanted to be able to make finding that easier. So in the drop down, there's a find a map, and then we updated the map page with ways to promote the tools they're creating more. Under the search capabilities, I don't know if you've been to a government agency website and typed something in a search and it's been not very productive. So we've tried to improve our search capability with new filters. So if you type in something like Bear Creek Redwoods Open Space Preserve, you can actually also filter it by, do you want to know about a project, or do you want to see board reports? Or so you could click on the meeting. And then on the far right, the public, easier access to meeting details. This was a request from a member of the public. And so now you can get to the agenda information much faster in the staff reports. All right, so in addition to our core work and CEP work, we also work on special projects, events, and focus areas. So this portfolio is pretty vast and broad in terms of initiatives, and it really requires a deep expertise in navigating complex issues and diverse community interests. But one example of these special projects is 2024 was the 10-year anniversary of Measure AAA. So we celebrated this throughout the year. And so here are a couple of highlights. But there was a dedicated website landing page that got quite a few views. We had a social media campaign, Measure AA Mondays. There were docent-specific guided activities around it. We placed stories and ads in Bay Nature, a specific open roads episode. And so the list goes on, and there was also a Measure AA Summer Views newspaper insert. And so this was placed in 7 community newspapers as well. And that was 87,000 inserts. So And just a couple of snapshots from these events and efforts. Bear Creek Redwoods Phase 2 trail opening also occurred, and we handled the event opening with the media, funding partners, government and elected officials and partners there. So, and thank you to all of you who were able to make it out to that really beautiful event. And then we also have the commemorative events, and it was wonderful to be able to honor Larry Hassett. And we have focus areas as well, piggybacking off the earlier presentation, but we do additional work around red flag warnings, and then around the prescribed burn that happened in the fall. We did a robust outreach plan, and that included, press release, postcards, GIS analysis of the smoke water view shed, IP interested party emails, social media signs, and then really coordinating with CAL FIRE and County Fire communications teams to make sure the messaging is consistent, that we're working together, that we are doing push notifications, Caltrans highway signs about it, and watch duty apps. So it was a lot of big effort, and thanks to Leanne for that work as well. And we've been also doing a push on to get more media stories on our fire resiliency program as well. Okay, and then another focus area is the coast. So while we've been there a number of years, in coastside years, we're still relatively new. So we give a special focus to consistently communicate about our coastal mission and our work out there. And so there is a landing page, and we, work to place an open road featured coastal wildlife preservation efforts. And every month we try and make sure that there is a coastal story in our newsletters as well. So that was looking back, a little snapshot on 2024, and looking forward to fiscal year 26. As I mentioned, we support all of the CIAP projects, over 100 often, and here's a little list of our priority 1 and 2 ones, and this priority structure helps public affairs understand the focus, time, and effort from a public affairs perspective. And so while, I know that some projects may be high priority for the agency overall, we're looking at where is that project in the life cycle, what milestones are anticipated for that project that really public affairs is going to be extremely involved in. And so that's how this list is generated. And so let's see. And then alongside these priorities is another critical aspect of public affairs work, and that is to respond effectively to unforeseen and high-stakes communications events. So this is also beyond the CIAP and other planned projects, and it really requires the ability for the department to be agile and have the capacity to respond quickly and often reprioritize and dedicate significant resources to managing reactive high-priority communication needs. So, and that can have to do with natural disasters or human-caused, events and wildlife events, as well as fun commemorative special events and critical and complex issues. So as part of looking forward, I would like to talk to you a little bit about our strategic plan, and which emergency communications is woven into. But just as quick background information, in 2019, Public Affairs worked with a consultant to develop a comprehensive strategic communications plan that would be a roadmap for district communications for 3 years. But that was 2019. So I was hired in the summer, July 2024, and as the original plan was approximately 5 years old, wanted to work on building upon that solid foundation and refine it with the intention of having something to bridge us through fiscal year 26. That can continue the alignment with the district goals and objectives, but it refresh us a little bit. So this refinement identifies these priorities. So I'll kind of go through each one by one. So the first one is to restructure the Public Affairs Department to foster a thriving, resilient team with the capacity to meet the growing needs of the organization and facilitate deeper subject matter understanding and maintain our core functions. And so to do that, there's various strategies, but I can just off a couple here. We want to enhance department cohesion and positive engagement through internal open communication and a culture of appreciation. And so want to have an annual retreat for our department and staff leadership opportunities. We're working to refine departmental processes and procedures to streamline workflows and remove barriers to efficiency. So some of that has to do with our CRM, that's our customer relationship management software, our on-call contract tracking, and making sure our roles and responsibilities are clear to other departments and how we work together. And then also encourage professionals and skill development. We've created a public affairs library of professional development opportunities, and really make sure we're supporting that growth. And then continue with the strategic plan. So I'm hoping what I'm talking about now is a bridge through, we've already started working on these things, and it's a bridge through 26. And then we'd like to bring on a consultant to get us that next longer term plan. So the next one is to make external communications more engaging and impactful, and maintain and grow public awareness, trust, and support. And so part of that was reimagining the social media strategic plan to be dynamic and modern, and amplify engagement. And we are committed to doing that annually. We want to evaluate the existing publications and pinpoint opportunities for improvement, and build stronger relationships with media outlets, including ethnic media, so that we can deliver more targeted and impactful and culturally relevant stories. And then assess and redefine the online store, and also refine our collateral, and not just the general public, but government affairs related collateral that showcase our projects and initiatives. And the third one is to strengthen crisis communication preparedness to enable us to be more efficient and effective during emergencies. So we're working to develop and implement a crisis communication readiness plan and have a centralized digital repository of resources, such as template press releases on certain topics, so that we can easily plug in the information when an event occurs. We'd like to conduct regular crisis communication trainings and simulations, so we are ready, and then implement a wildfire preparedness campaign, public campaign to implement prior to each fire season. So the public is really aware of all the districts doing to make sure that we're being proactive. And then engage and build a broader base of open space allies, ambassadors, and champions to prepare for the future of open space. So that's really forging those meaningful relationships with delegation members and key influencers so that we can build support for our mission projects and have a say in industry standards. We want to grow those community partnerships and engage community leaders so they can be ambassadors for MidPenn and build trust and connect with those communities that are really key. And then expand our current outreach program to foster deeper connections and connect visitor services like stewardship and natural resource science initiatives and docent and visitor service docent-led activities with the public so that they can get more involvement. The last is position MidPenn as a thought leader in open space protection and stewardship and ecologically sensitive access. That our work is essential for healthy habitats and climate resiliency. So we want to promote our expertise of the board and our leadership and our staff, and potentially host and leverage expert spotlight events to share that knowledge and be a trusted source of information and raise the profile of MidPenn's engagement in panels and presentations and events. So that is what we're looking at through fiscal year 26. And so, in turning to that first goal of the strategic plan, the team, I wanted to speak to that a little bit more. The restructuring of the department to foster a thriving and resilient team to meet the capacity of the growing organization. So as part of this process, following my appointment in summer, I underwent a needs assessment and an open dialogue with internal stakeholders, and this process really yielded valuable insights. And I got to know the FOSM, and I really do admire the district's foresight to try and address those, be proactive and address the changing demands of the organization in a thoughtful, methodical way. But just to give you some context, during the FOSM 2023 refresh, the Public Affairs Department was in transition, and the refresh was completed prior to the hiring of a new public affairs manager. So as we, as an organization, continue to grow, acquire land, open land to more public access, take on more projects, the need for public affairs and communication and partnerships and relationship building continues to grow. And as these quotes show, it's recognized in the FOSM. So this effort led to the development of a departmental growth model, and that I really hope is designed to improve productivity, efficiency, and quality. So this is the baseline. Before we get to the growth model, under the previous public affairs manager, the department underwent several staffing structures, and it ranged in size from 9 to 10 members, and that included temporary staff and interns. And then when I came on in the summer of 2024, the structure of the department was generally flat. All but one full-time staff member reported directly to the public affairs manager. So the manager really serves in dual roles, both as the department manager and as the chief communications officer. And so the new growth model would really allow the manager to allocate attention beyond supervisory duties to strategic improvements. So this is the new growth model, and it would align the department's structure with the public affairs core areas. So you can see there's a PIO editorial stream, there is an outreach and digital stream, there's a government affairs stream, and an admin. And as well as an improved workflow and having succession planning in there. So there would be a PA3 leading each stream with senior level experience, or government affairs program manager. And then under each stream, public affairs specialist 1 or 2 would be reporting to the 3. And there would be a general manager approved reclassification of a specialist 2 to a 3 this fiscal year. So this is really looking at meeting the district's evolving demands. And in order to realize the potential of this structure, Public Affairs is requesting 2 FOSM recommended base positions as part of the fiscal year 26 budget and action plan. So that will go to ABC on May 6th and then to the full board on June 11th. So these 2 positions are recommended for inclusion based on the emerging needs of the district and align well with the considerations expressed in the FOSM refresh. So the PA 1-2 that would be focused in the outreach stream reflects the need for additional capacity to keep pace with the outreach program's successes and including the desire to expand our outreach engagement in the coastside communities. And I think that we know that a strong outreach program is a tangible expression of the district's values. It really demonstrates the district's commitment to building those long-term, meaningful relationships with the communities it serves. And through tablings and events and partnerships with leaders and organizations that are locally respected and trusted, the program builds ongoing organizational capacity for the delivery of our priorities. And then the other position is a Public Affairs Specialist 1-2 that's focused in the government affairs stream. So over the last 9 years, since Governmental Affairs program was initiated, we've made great strides in pursuing and progressing mission positive legislation and funding sources with over $25.5 million in state and federal and county member requests alone. And it's really helped to shape regional and statewide policy. So this program's allowed the district to issue SPOT, identify and advocate against detrimental state policy, and successfully pass bills and actively support beneficial legislation. However, with the expansion of the district's holdings and the project growth, the necessity for productive partnerships with a large delegation and key stakeholders has increased. So in addition to the state funding landscape changing and the growing threat of climate change, we've seen dramatic shifts at the federal level as well that have impacted the scope of work and program needs, which have really increased beyond the capacity of a single person. So the addition of another governmental affairs focused staff will assist with succession planning and help create a long-term career ladder for this critical program that encompasses 44 electeds. We have so many jurisdictions and 3 counties and 17 cities. That was just one person doing this work before. So in addition, the position will allow for increased engagement with national and regional and state partner organizations to advance initiatives such as 30 by 30, Outdoors for All, and California's Natural and Working Lands Climate Strategy that really translate into future opportunities to support the district's mission. So the board has done a great job of voicing support for building the capacity of this program to have a robust intergovernmental program. So these 2 positions will really better position the district to deliver on Measure AA, the vision plan, and organizational priorities in the CAP. And we are planning some of the most exciting projects in history: a new coastal field office, a major renovation of Skyline, a new shuttle program at Purisima, new trails, major wildlife crossing and trail crossings. And we have our critical wildland fire resiliency program work. So that we see that growth and we see that those types of projects. And we think that these positions will really get us to the place to do that work well. So we recognize that as the district implements FOSM Recommendation 42 to expand career ladders, and FOSM directive growth continues to yield an increase in projects and productivity, we can reassess this staffing level under this model over time, and any future positions beyond these will be brought to the board of directors year by year as part of the annual budget. So going back to the GM recommendation, that was our informational update on both items, and happy to take questions.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to highlight the Reels addition to Instagram, particularly around the Bear Creek Phase 2 opening. I thought that was really fantastic. And, you know, we had a lot of good content on our Instagram and Facebook. I think Midpen was always known for these beautiful pictures of beautiful places and also good information in the posts. But those Reels really added a human dimension to it, and a personal dimension that you don't get from those other things. So I think that's just a great idea, and I'd love to see that continue. And then also the Preserve Guide. I was at a tabling event last year, which is coming up again next week, and I hope to be able to make it as well. And you could see that people are walking around and everybody has some sort of brochure, and a lot of times they pick them up and there's not really much that they can do or learn from it. And you could see people looking through this and figuring out, here are places that I can go to that I don't know. So I think that was a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And huge thanks to Natalie Jolly for her work on the Preserve Guide. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I will echo what was just said about the Preserve Guide. It's incredible. People love it. I love it. Thank you for that. Couple questions. First, how long will it take to clone Josh?
Well, we got to get that position in, and that person can start training under him and building those relationships and understanding our priorities and needs and how to talk about it and so it'll be a great asset.
Absolutely. Okay, a couple questions, less facetious. The first has to do with communicating around, I think, what you call it, high priority events. And I think a lot about how Midpen does or does not evolve its messaging with regard to what's going on more broadly in the world. And, you know, we seem to have a kind of a core set of things that we communicate on that were really effective. But I'm wondering, how do changes in the political landscape, the, kind of world that we live in, infuse the messaging? How does that evolve with time?
Yeah. I mean, I do think that knowing what's happening in the world is critical to determining what our messaging will be. And sometimes it is stay the course and be that North Star to people. And sometimes it is talking up the positive funding that has come and what that means and how important that is. And from earmarks or from other places, and how that does impact people daily. So I think, you know, as events evolve and change, like Josh is keeping a really good pulse on what's happening from a government affairs perspective, and how does that change when we go meet with people, when we put together our project fact sheets, when we do our key messages.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with the way MidPenn keeps messaging really on the positive. And, but then I wonder occasionally whether, you know, it might be appropriate if something kind of dramatic happens, that we just call it for what it is. And this is how it's going to affect our work moving forward. And I don't know how you think about that, but, or whether there's even a need that you've seen.
Yeah, and we put in the public affairs budget for fiscal year 26, a communications consultant to work with on kind of those high need instances, to be able to kind of talk through some of those issues, and like what the pros and cons of different approaches, and strategically what makes the most sense.
Good, great. I think MidPenn being kind of a beacon of hope is really important. My final question has to do with our docent program and our, you know, kind of interpretive programs, and how does the messaging that public affairs comes up with, that develops, how does that do you then transfer that messaging to our interpretive folks so that it infuses their work, or how do you keep those two things tied together?
Yeah, with project level work, and if there's key messaging, it's clearly working with the PMs and the subject matter experts to develop the right key messages. For docent-led activities, a lot of those do come from visitor services, and then they bring them to us, and they're like, how can we best shout this out? How can we get more engagement or involvement? And one of the things that we were working with the docent-led interpretive and education folks on was they wanted to boost some engagement. And so we said, okay, well, why don't you post your the monthly activities to Nextdoor, which we actually now have an account that is specific to the district area. And so they can choose communities, neighborhoods to post to, but it's just getting that information out through other channels. And then we've also carved out a little blurb for them on the e-news. So before it was just like, generally everything was listed there. And now they can also do a little blurb on like, hey, there's these themes, it's wildflower time, let's get out. And so we're trying to work hand in hand on how to promote those events as best as possible.
And who does that? So on the new org chart that you've created, under what where does that job fall?
Yeah, so the docent program is under I&E and Visitor Services. And so they work with the docents to come up with the events, and the titles and the fun descriptions. And then they might be like, hey, this one's not getting enough folks signed up for it, or we've seen a fall in this type of event. Like, how can we work together to boost that, promote that, and then we'll discuss like different ways to bring that. I don't know if I'm
because my question is more, I understand that. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Put my hands down. Which staff member in your team works directly with the interpretive services?
Oh, I see. Okay, so HEMA handles the e-newsletter, and so often the blurb that goes in there is those two areas coordinating. Leanne handles views, and so that beautiful insert of all the guided activities is included in there. So she also works with them there. And then if there's a specific story, call out, new volunteer program, that might be in views as well. So we have an editorial calendar as well. So I don't know if that gets at the two staff members. And then there's a great effort too to have some of the I&E folks maybe contribute a little bit more to our social posts as well, to like highlight some of those, whether it's an event or a volunteer program or effort or volunteers that did a great job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. No more questions for me. Thank you.
Well, wonderful job, and really, Josh, everyone who's worked on this. So, the one question I have is surveys, like, of course, we do them whenever, of course, we have to go out for funding measures, but we don't want to do them just then, right? And I think we talked about this before, but is there any plan or schedule for doing kind of a
benchmark survey? I think that when I first started, I did look at the surveys and how frequently they were happening. And we did talk about like, okay, this might be the frequency we want to do because don't want to overwhelm people, and then they stop paying attention. But if we go through a communications strategic plan, like long-term effort, then I'm guessing that a survey will be part of that as well.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay. And then, and I was thinking, I mean, we are becoming more and more this thought leader that you talk about, and I know Anna's been out there more and such, but yeah, I mean, it makes me think, I mean, if I think of just the whole Bay Area, and I mean, the constant topics are, housing, transportation, and in the third wheel, the third part of the triangle is open space. But, in a way that nobody really says it all together, right? It should be housing, transportation, open space. And, that might be something to work on with, there's MTC with ABAG and BCDC and such, but to really kind of think of it cohesively, the role that we play in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a very good point. And I know Josh is on top of that too, in terms of how housing and open space and all those different pieces play together. But yeah, elevating it in people's minds. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I agree. This was a wonderful presentation, and your push for more help is well understood. I can understand why you need it. I want to piggyback a little on what Director Kirsten Tucker was talking about, and I just wondered if it's you or if it's visitor service that we have more of a push for agriculture on the coast.
And
just
in
because
terms of like getting the word out about it.
in terms, like they have As Fresh as It Gets and, farmers markets. And I don't know if this is something that we could consider, but agriculture is part of our mission on the coast. And I noticed it wasn't mentioned once in your report, and I haven't seen an article on, people eating local food. I think, that's the way I was going, is more, the local aspect of agriculture.
Right. When we do try and put a coastal item into each newsletter, we do talk of, it could be ag related, or it could be, Cloverdale, or, something like that. But I think what you're talking about is a little different than like our conservation grazing program. So
Yes.
yeah.
The conservation grazing program is definitely part of it, and should be considered because that's local meat, basically.
Right.
But when you focus on the coast, maybe just a small mention of their big economic reason for being, which is the farming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they sustain us.
Well, I don't think I've heard anything from colleagues that I disagree with. All good input, really good presentation, terrific job. Josh, I'm glad you're getting a boost. I don't know how you've done all you've been doing anyway. I would agree with what Margaret was just saying about farmers markets and such. And also, one thing that I noticed, and I've mentioned this before, is like I don't really see much focus or attention on the Bay side either. And I mean, we do only have one preserve, but it's significant in so many different ways. And so I'd like to see some focus on that too. Now it's been 6 years ago, but when I was campaigning in East Palo Alto, especially in East Palo Alto, who voted strenuously to support Measure AA. But so many of them didn't even know that the preserve was right there and hadn't been to it. So whatever we can do to help outreach to that community so that they take advantage of it and to promote it, in ways to get other people out there to appreciate it. It's a fabulous resource, a really, really fabulous resource. And still one of the best construction projects I've ever seen was that. Because I went out there when it was being built. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And there was one, oh yes, the comment that Dr. Kishimoto made about housing, transportation, and open space. What I hear more is housing, transportation, and climate, which of course is directly related to open space, but that we can promote our open spaces and the forests that we protect and preserve, and their support for climate. I think that would be also another really strong focus.
Yeah.
Really strong focus.
Yeah.
So
absolutely agreed on that one.
yeah.
Resilience.
And resilience, yeah, is another
Yeah,
good word.
resiliency, yeah.
Yeah.
And we are very excited for when a new access point for Ravenswood opens up to really celebrate that as well this year.
Great,
So,
super.
yeah.
Thank you so very much.
I just want to follow at the end here. All of the folks that I wanted to say did an incredible job aren't here to hear it directly. So if you would pass it along through the channels, I would very, very much appreciate it. Both presentations today were incredibly deep, thoughtful, articulate, and I just really am always quite taken with how skilled our staff is, and in many, many, many ways. You know, you were talking about how to deal with, the three different public, the Facebook and so forth and so on. I know, my 11-year-old great granddaughter is on her damn phone all the time, and she used to read, and so this puzzles me, but it scares me a little. In that, I was thinking just the other day, I've got to work a lot harder to get my family members out. I've done it a few, but they come in different waves. So I'm going to focus personally on that to get them in the field a little bit. So at any rate, I think incredible job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Certainly as a board member, I couldn't do any of that kind of, sorting through, connecting. I sort of show up and thank people otherwise. So anyhow,
That's important.
yeah, I think it works. So, okay. There is no vote on this. Is there any more board questions? All right.
Thank you, everyone, and a huge thanks to the whole public affairs team. They are an incredible group, and I'm so thankful to be here. So,
okay. So we are now up to committee reports. I need to speak with you before you run off tonight. Please, Ms. Lowe, not now, but the meeting's over. I have a couple of things I would like to chat with you about. Okay. No committees.
I have a committee report.
Oh, committee report.
Yeah.
Thanks, great.
So we met yesterday, and let me talk about these in reverse order. So to Director Kishimoto's comment about housing and open space, we had a discussion about this legislation, SB 715, which has to do with post-disasters, trying to make sure that housing reallocations are not pushed to open space into high fire risk areas or other high risk areas. So the topic was for the district to take a support position on this legislation, and we voted to do that. So the other item in the meeting was the selection of the trail name for the planned loop trail at Miramontes Ridge at Johnston Ranch. And this is to honor Lenny Roberts. And this came forward on the initiative of Mike Williams and Director Christine Tucker, who were both at the meeting. Mike presented, and we really appreciate your initiative there. Also Anna for supporting this on an accelerated schedule. And we also had a public comment from Craig Britton, which was very nice. So I think this item comes to the full board in June. Is that right? Oh. All right.
Super. Okay, then.
Margaret, did you have any comment from the meeting?
No, thank you for taking on the chair position, though.
No problem.
Okay, so then we are now up to director's reports or staff reports. I'm sorry.
Just really quickly, there were a couple of staff members, including myself, who attended Walter Moore's retirement gathering that was held at, I think it's the former Flegger Estate residence area, and a beautiful location. And I spoke on behalf of the district. There were a number of other speakers, including Craig Britton, and Andrew McKenzie with the Open Space Authority, and a few others. And it was a very well received, and I just recognize and acknowledge Walter for all of his contributions that have extended over to Midpen and his partnership, and the game-changing, how can I say it, funding mechanism that he helped put in place here through Measure AA, through the campaign that he led with Post. So anyway, it was a wonderful event.
Super. Any other? Well, I had one on the 15th. I attended the bench naming and presentation for two very long-term docents and volunteers in the district, Struther and his wife, Tommy K. Smith. Struther has been doing it for like 40 years in all different kinds of capacities, from in the office to out in the field. And it's in the bottom of the Seven Springs Trail in Fremont Older, if you're familiar with that area. But it's his daughter had organized this bit, and the thing that was really neat, she expressed that she and her dad used to ride the trails there in Fremont Older or walk the trails. And every time they came to that low spot in the Seven Springs Trail, he would say, there ought to be a bench here. And so now there is, commemorating both of them. And it was really a neat event in the sense that there were a lot of people who had contact and stories to tell about these two wonderful folks, and to be able to gather them together, to have the bench there, to have a plaque done and so forth. It was really low key, but wonderful. So I'm glad I went to present this. So with that, the meeting is closed.
One more director's report.
Oh,
if I might.
beg your pardon. Good.
Yesterday, we had a great meeting with Congressman Sam Liccardo out at First Creek to do a tour of a bit of the potential trail, the conceptual trail alignment for the Bay to the Sea Trail and the First to the Sea Trail, and talked to him a little bit about the two parking lots that are being planned for. And it was really nice to have him out there. He's clearly coming up to speed quickly on the coast. And in fact, he now knows he needs to bring a few more jackets with him when he comes to the coast. He was so cold. But anyway, it was great. And thank you, Josh, for really orchestrating a wonderful collection. Tina was there, and it was great. And the cows were right around us, and it was perfect.
And then finally, just a reminder for those who are hoping to attend. Friday, we have our commemorative event for Herb Grinch here at the main office. And I believe it starts at 11 a.m.
So the meeting is adjourned.